Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I am going to call the August 19th Select Board meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. And make note that we are a board of 4 this evening with Mr. DaCosta online he's going to be here in a bit, but he's en route. Bobby, can you confirm that you can hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. And we can hear you. Thank you very much. So all
Welcome.
votes while we have a member online will be taken by roll call. And when Bobby arrives, we'll go back to voice votes. Okay, as to the agenda, there is one change. That is item 9, number 1, capital projects review for the schools. That is being tabled until our September 9th meeting. So we will not have that item this evening. Other than that, I will accept the agenda as published and move to the town manager for announcements.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. Tacoma Green, which is the housing development right next door to public safety facility, the construction is underway next door. It's our new 64 unit rental housing community. There's an upcoming housing lottery, and you can visit tacomagreen.com to follow construction progress and learn more details about the housing lottery. And we probably have a link on the town website to the project. Yes, we do. Master plan. We have some listening sessions coming up. Barrett Planning Group will host a series of these sessions on August 25th and 26th to solicit feedback from the public on the master plan implementation plan. Those sessions are virtual the session on August 25th is virtual. The session on August 26th will be held in person at the meeting trailer at 131 Pleasant Street, and more detailed information may be found on the town website. And you are asked to sign up for a session. We have round 3 of our 2026 committee vacancies coming up for Cannabis Advisory Committee, Capital Program Committee, Council on Aging, Planning Board Alternate, and Town of Nantucket Scholarship Committee.
If I might, we go through the announcement, and then when I get to select board comments,
All right, there are no select board meetings the next 2 Wednesdays, Wednesday, August 26th and Wednesday, September 2nd. We're back on Wednesday, September 9th. Town offices will be closed on Monday, September 7th for Labor Day. And the board at its August 5th, 2026 executive session meeting voted to authorize the continued withholding or release in part subject to redactions under the public records law, 2026 executive session minutes dated January 8th, March 5th, April 2nd, April 30th, May 14th, May 18th, and June 4th. And those will be released to the public shortly as redacted. And that's it for announcements.
Okay, any select board comments? Jill?
One comment I wanted to mention is I was thinking about Stroll. I wanted to think about Stroll earlier this year, and possibly looking at road closures for Stroll. And I wanted to know if maybe the board would support us having a little work group to see about maybe extending some of the times for the road closures that we have that weekend. It's a busy, hectic weekend, and I thought it would be a good time to look at maybe trying to do it. I don't know if we can, but it's something that I kind of hoped we could at least look into.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Anything, Matt?
Yeah, I have one. 2 weeks ago, I put a passport application in down at the Visitor Services Center, and it arrived. I didn't pay extra, and they told me it was going to take, 8 or 10 weeks, and it arrived today. So I wanted to say they were very nice, and the government was quick, and here it is. So
A little good news.
Going somewhere?
no, I'm not, but now I can. So be nice to me, please.
All right. So I wanted to talk about the round 3 appointment process, and I'm a little worried that some of these boards have open seats longer than is absolutely necessary in a round 3 situation. And I wanted to ask the board if you wanted to consider expediting the process, like for the 3rd round, right? So we get these seats filled. I was thinking maybe even just foreshortening it 1 week and have the names read for 1 week and appointments the following week, and just skip that one one less reading of the names, because it's a much smaller group. And so I don't know if we need to take action or whether we can just by consensus agree to amend the 3rd round. You guys comfortable with that? Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right. Erica, so if you'll make any revisions, does that make sense? Or would you like a vote from us on our amendment?
That makes perfect sense. I think we just sent an add in today to the current, so we'll amend that tomorrow if need be.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Sorry for the
That's okay.
late notice. I'm just worried about boards when quorums and so forth, really just keeping the work of the town flowing.
So
Uh,
just to be clear, September 9th will be the date that you announce, and then September 16th is when
Yep.
you will make the appointment.
Yep.
And people can speak on their applications if there's multiple. Okay.
And then I think maybe next year with a little more planning, we might even shorten it further if we end up with a round 3. But I think for this year's, that seems like a reasonable adjustment. Okay. If nothing else from the select board, I am going to go to response to public comment from our August 5th meeting. Amy Eldridge inquired whether once the stormwater regulations and fees are adopted and implemented, homeowners whose lawns help refill the aquifer would receive a refund. The response is, stormwater fees are generally based on impervious surface area rather than the property's environmental contributions. So lawns which are pervious typically aren't factored into the fee calculation. The town is not aware of a mechanism for crediting or refunding fees based on aquifer recharge specifically, though practices can vary by town. The town's fee structure is still being developed, and we don't have final details to share quite yet. And then Michael Alvarez inquired about the installation of 2 flock cameras at the intersection of Easy and Broad Street. The Nantucket Police Department has 2 flock cameras at Easy and Broad Street installed in 2021 solely to track vehicles going to and from the Steamship Authority. For example, stolen vehicles or those tied to amber or silver alerts. Photos are stored for 30 days, then automatically deleted. No continuous video is recorded. Access is limited to a single ALPR administrator, the Deputy Chief of Police. No outside agency has been granted access to this data in the past 5 years. Separately, NPD's 2022 contract with Axon added 12 license plate readers, 1 per marked cruiser, as part of a select board approved change order. NPD's use of this technology is governed by department policy and is part of its ongoing work towards state accreditation. For more detailed response, visit the For the Record page on the town website, and there is more detail there, which I'm not going to read. It's several pages long, so you're welcome to go take a peek at it. Okay, I will now open for public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. Dylan?
Thank you. Dylan Etchimpel, the town's Deputy Housing Director. I just wanted to share that following the successful relocation of the 5 dwelling units to support year-round housing on Nantucket, the town and the Nantucket Land Bank are seeking bids for their reconstruction. These are the units located at 158 Matticat Road. There's 3 at that location and 2 at 159 Hummock Pond. The invitation for bids, or IFB, is now live on Bid Docs, which I hate reading a URL into the record, but it's biddocs.com/bidding/-B26-8MZ4. You can go to the project page and it should be available online for easier access. And there's a pre-site bid tomorrow. And we encourage local and regional contractors to bid on this housing project. There's full information online. Thank you.
Or you can call Dylan at, no, kidding.
Yeah.
Email Dylan at his town email if you need more details. Okay. Lucy.
Hi, Lucy. I would like to continue the concerns that Mr. Alvarez raised in the last meeting. I think that we need to take a step back and ask where we're headed with our technology, privacy, and our rights. I believe our rights are God-given. They aren't something government gives us, and I believe government has a responsibility to protect those rights while also keeping the community safe. I think I understand why flock cameras are being used. I understand that they can help law enforcement solve crimes, and I'm not against public safety and I'm not against technology. But I have to ask, at what point does protecting us become monitoring us? We are not the only community raising these concerns. Communities across Massachusetts and the country are asking the same questions. Some have restricted or ended their use of flock, while others have put stronger rules around automatic license plate surveillance. That tells me this isn't just about whether technology works, it's also about where we draw the line. We're also living in a time of rapidly expanding technology, enormous database centers, and ever-growing ability to collect, store, process, and even sell information. Maybe these issues are separate, but I think we should pause and ask ourselves, where is this all taking us? I don't want to wake up in a few years from now and realize little by little we surrendered freedoms we never intended to give away. And there's something about the name flock that makes me think. A flock is a group that can be watched and moved together. I don't want to be treated as simply as a vehicle, a license plate, or a data point. We are individuals, and our privacy and our freedom matters. So I respectfully ask the board to revisit this issue and allow some more public input. Let us understand what is being collected, who can access it, how long it's retained, and what protections are in place. I want our community to be safe, but I also want it to remain free. And I hope we can protect both. So thanks for listening. And on behalf of myself and some community members, we just want to show appreciation to Mr. Alvarez for having the integrity to bring this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Amy?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. Good evening. Just to kind of piggyback on Lucy, there's a separate camera at the top of the pole. Who runs and monitors the 360 eye in the sky? Because it seems like a little overkill with the flock and the 360 camera. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Online, I have Mary Longacre. I forgot to remind everybody we do have 3-minute limit, but everybody's been great so far. So just a quick reminder.
Thank you, Brooke. Mary Longacre. Based on the published comments, I believe both the current and Mr. Alvarez requested an answer to the question, has the Nantucket Police Department ever used the information gathered by the flock cameras in the course of an investigation? I'd like to echo that question and directly ask, is it going to be answered? I don't think it has been yet. And I think it's important that the public knows if there has been any benefit to using those. So I would appreciate a response from the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Megan Perry online.
Thanks, Brooke. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Excellent. I was just wondering if you will be accepting public comment during the housing production plan discussion.
We will.
You will. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Campbell.
Good evening, Campbell Sutton. So I just had a couple of comments, I think. One, I really appreciated the presentation that the finance people did for bonding and borrowing, et cetera. Found it very informative. So thanks so much for doing that. So another piece, I think I saw a design rough draft kind of thing for the DPW building at Shadbush somewhere. And I would just like to comment on the amount of asphalt being used there. I think we really have to be careful about the kinds of heat sinks that we're going to create and the cost involved in that level. I mean, if we're trying to keep costs reasonable, which I hope we are. The other thing was the other night at the discussion on projects, future projects, and someone had mentioned the Pulpus intersection and how it seemed to be like in need of a light. I believe that was the intention in the design to begin with, because that would be the only safe way that that intersection could function. So, thank you.
Thank you, Campbell. Okay, not seeing any other hands or anyone rising to the mic. We'll move from public comment through new business, which we do not have any, to approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. I would probably start with a motion for minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants first, and then we'll take pending contracts
So
separately.
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor by roll call, Matt?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Bobby?
Aye. Sorry.
And the chair, that's okay. Nope, I know it takes a minute to find the unmute on your phone. Okay, and I vote aye, so those are approved 4-0. Next up is we're going to review a proposal for pending contracts review process, and I'm going to hand this over to Libby.
Thank you. So based on some inquiries at recent board meetings for additional information about contracts on the pending contracts list, we want to review with you a proposed revised process for the review of pending contracts. And I just want to re-review why pending contracts is on your agenda at all. The town charter requires that the select board have the opportunity to disapprove contracts. Otherwise, they are technically approved by the town manager. All of the contracts do go through a pretty extensive pre-vetting process before being placed on the pending contract list. And all of them are, not all of them, most of them have generally gone through town meeting. So the revised process would be, as shown up there, I'll just review that with you. It's a little bit small writing. We have a contract summary sheet that is used by the procurement staff and the town departments when a contract needs to be approved or gone through this pending contract process. The summary sheet contains information about the contract that is extracted by the procurement staff and summarized on the pending contracts list that is attached to the select board agenda. We have 4 different summary sheets, depending on the type of contract: professional services, leases and licenses, amendments, and grants. In order to provide more substantive contract information, which hopefully will meet the needs of board informational requests, but if not, of course, they can certainly ask. We are adding, Erica, you can go to that summary sheet sample. So here's a look at what the contract summary sheet looks like. It has the name of the project, the vendor number. You don't necessarily need to know about the description, whether it's a renewal or new, and funding information. We've added, if you go down a tiny bit, the funding source there, more detailed information about the funding source, including what it is. Has anything been expended, what the remaining funding is? And I don't think it's shown, yes, bid summary. If you go up just, sorry, I should have gone this earlier. The bid summary would be how many bids were received. That's an add to this contract summary sheet and what those bids were. So our recommendation is that these completed summary sheets, which hopefully provide sufficient explanation for board review, will be in the packet behind the board's agenda so that you can cross-check your pending contract questions with the summary sheet. And we won't routinely include the full contract, which obviously is many pages, unless so requested by the board. We could add those to future agenda packets if the board would like to receive them, but we are not recommending that right at the moment. This is something that is going to take some additional time by staff, but if it helps the board with information and the public, then so be it.
Any questions from the board on this as a revised process? Any comments?
No, I appreciate that because I know I'm asking a lot of questions about the contracts. I think some of it just becomes scope of services, and then for things that required an amendment, then I kind of wanted to read that, compared to the amendment. And so I don't know how you'll handle the amendments when we have them, but you usually have a short 1-page sheet, which I thought was super helpful. On the funding source, and you'll see this when I ask questions about this week, the reason that I ask more detailed is because often funding sources are kind of a little more generic. If I've seen them at the capital committee, then I feel like I kind of know what it is. But if I haven't and I just want to know a little more detail than the broader amount that it's referencing. And so I don't always know which one that is, even though I've gone back and read Article 10 now, every week for some of these things. So this looks really good to me. It's a lot more detailed information. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Just a thought, how quickly, say we do want to look at the detail of this. If we receive this on a Friday, could we say, oh, I'd like to see all of it, and the detail could come, is that?
Yeah, once the packet's out,
Right.
which is on a Friday,
Right.
you could certainly ask for that. There is, not a ton of time between Friday and the Wednesday, but there should be time to get you a contract or a scope if that is really only what you need. It's a little harder to get all the information out ahead of Friday because there is a lot going on with getting that packet out, and that the packet processing, of course, is just one thing that town admin is working on amidst many others.
Right. The reason I'm asking, there was one contract that I think we even may have approved it, but we shouldn't have. The lease was different, and I dogged it for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, and then we changed it because it was not the town's responsibility. But that would not have been caught. That went through the staff, it went through the lawyers, et cetera, and we ended up talking about it multiple times here and got it. So I just want to make sure that if we do want to get into the details of it, because we have we have intuition or we have knowledge and we want to do that we can, that's all. So thanks.
Okay. Moving on, Jill, I know you had some questions about the list of contracts in our packet today. So if you want to do those before we take action.
Sure. So the first one is about the contract extension for the pilot study for landfill leachate PFAS removal. This is just an extension, this is really just a comment. So what they're really planning to do is look for some remediation, potentially removal, potentially destruction of PFAS at these locations. So that's great. But it might generate the end of the study, which would be, I think, next June. It might generate a new, rather capital item for the SIP. And I just wanted the board to be aware that that could be something to keep an eye on as we're evaluating capital projects going forward, because that's something that could easily jump the queue. The next question I have is on the UMass Dartmouth project. I don't know if Jeff is here or maybe, there he is. And then on the groundwater modeling, the only question I have for those, Jeff, is I couldn't figure out in Article 10 which funding source, which is what I was just talking about.
Sure. Again, Jeff Carlson, Natural Resources Director. So one at a time, the UMass Dartmouth, that's our annual water quality monitoring contract for TMDL compliance.
So that's the baseline data.
That's the baseline data. That was from there. This is the 3rd year of that contract. We just have a yearly option that we have to pick up to continue that service.
Yeah.
And then for the groundwater study on the next page down, Erica, just for people to see it, with Geosyntec, that is from the Article 10 money from the coast resiliency planning. And in 2023, that was a free cash allocation.
Okay, so it is from coastal resiliency money, because I thought that was
Yes.
not what I was.
Yep.
Okay.
It's from there, because it's related to that, again, that project that came from the coast resiliency plan and through crack for the Easy Street. It's a data gap that was discovered during the initial scoping phase for some groundwater information in that area.
Okay, that makes sense, because I looked at your Article 10 and I didn't see anything related to that, and I was told it wasn't from coastal resiliency money.
Nope,
So,
sorry about that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or a motion?
Move approval?
A second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Bobby, Okay. It sounds like he's not accessible at the moment, so that will be a 3-0 vote. The chair votes aye. Okay.
Mary Longacre has her hand raised.
Um,
Do you want to?
uh,
Oh, but then she just put it down.
okay. All right. Sorry, Mary. Missed that. Okay. Next up, Citizen Departmental Committee requests and reports. The first item on this section is a joint meeting with the Planning Board for Affordable Housing Trust request for adoption of the 2026 Housing Production Plan and approval of submission to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for certification. I'm going to call on the Planning Board Chair to call their meeting to order.
I'd like to call the planning board portion of the joint meeting to order.
Right up to your mouth.
We have 4 members attending: Liza Haddon, Nat Lowell, myself, Iverson, and Joe Top, I believe, is online.
Yes.
I would accept a motion to accept the agenda. Motion made by Nat, seconded by Liza. Liza.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well.
Great. So the joint meeting is now open, and I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy Housing Director for a presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to start by saying that, so Dylan Metchenpel, the town's Deputy Housing Director. I do serve as a planning board alternate. I'm of course recused from this on this matter, and as an alternate wouldn't have a vote anyway, but I'm here in my capacity as staff in the housing department. So we are joined by Judy Barrett and Tony Young of Barrett Planning Consulting, who I'm going to turn it over to in a moment to provide the presentation, but I just wanted to give a little bit of background. So a housing production plan is a state mandated policy document. It's required that we update it and certify it with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities every 5 years. And it is required to stay in under safe harbor under Chapter 40B to retain local control over zoning. Local control of zoning for developments on Nantucket. So it's required to stay in safe harbor. And once we reach the 10% threshold on the subsidized housing inventory. It is an overarching policy document. It is proposing plans that we would then be moving forward with in collaboration with the town's departments and boards. And we initially brought it forward to the planning board for their review July 13th, and then the select board for an initial review on July 22nd. The Affordable Housing Trust endorsed the plan on August 4th. And then originally it was supposed to be voted on by the planning board at their August 10th meeting, but because the chair and vice chair were unavailable, we rescheduled so that it would be voted on tonight during a joint meeting. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Judy, through you, Madam Chair.
Judy, you're muted.
Be good if I checked. Do we have screen share permission?
You do?
Okay. Okay, very good. Hold on. It's looking
I
like,
also have your presentation if you want me to share it.
why don't we run it from your end? Because it doesn't look like the share is opening, so I'm perfectly fine to just go with it if you want to run it from there. So let me know when it's up. There we go. So good evening, everyone. I have to tell you, this is my 3rd housing production plan project working with Nantucket, and the town deserves a lot of credit because the first one I worked on, which was back in 2016, the town had 121 units on the subsidized housing inventory. And as you know from reading the plan and what we discussed with you a few weeks back, that number has now jumped to 512. And it's really entirely because of efforts by the town to deal with its affordable and workforce housing needs. So why don't we go to the next slide? We're going to give a little bit of an overview. This is abbreviated from the previous presentation we did for you, but just want to sort of make sure everybody understands what the state requirements are that we have to address or that the town needs to address, give you a high-level look at the goals and strategies that are in the proposed plan, just refresh everybody's memory about what the procedural requirements are for having the plan approved by the Commonwealth, and then take whatever questions or comments you may wish to direct toward us. Next slide, please. So to be clear, a housing production plan is a specific state regulated plan that is supposed to assist communities that are trying to work toward the 10% minimum under Chapter 40B for affordable housing. So it doesn't prescribe comprehensive permits under Chapter 40B, but it recognizes the 10% minimum and encourages towns to work toward it through whatever mechanisms they wish that would be successful. This rule was instituted about 25 years ago. It's intended to reward communities that make progress. And as I think most of you know, Nantucket has earned that reward a few times since it started working in earnest to implement a housing production plan 10 years ago, because the town has on more than one occasion had its housing plan certified because you have produced enough units to sort of meet the minimum requirement for an annual or 2-year certification. The primary focus of a housing production plan is sort of local initiatives carried out by a town, mainly to address units that will be eligible for the Chapter 40B subsidized housing inventory, which means housing that's affordable to families with lower moderate incomes. Next slide, please. Because of your efforts over the last 10 years, you now have 512 housing units on the SHI, and you're at 8.28%, which is a far cry from where you were 10 years ago. The housing department projects that you'll be at 594 units by 2028, which is bringing you very close to that 10% minimum. So credit to the town, the taxpayers of Nantucket, and everybody who's sort of chipped in to make this work. Next slide, please. So I want to just review quickly what the state requirements are so everybody's clear about that. Go ahead to the next slide. So the most important part of the plan is the needs assessment. And I say it's the most important part because if you don't really understand what your needs are, it's kind of hard to have a plan that you're going to be able to implement. So the needs assessment consists of a demographic analysis, projections to the extent that they're available, and a market analysis, a look at what development constraints impede the town's ability to create more affordable housing. And those constraints typically are environmental resources that, certainly every community would want to respect and protect, infrastructure constraints, and then local regulatory impediments as well. There are goals that required for the plan. Those goals are of two types. One is numeric, which is a number that would be your target every year for being able to obtain certification, which I'll explain more in a minute. And the other type of goal is qualitative, which is really what kind of housing do you want to create? What kinds of needs are you most focusing on? So there are qualitative and quantitative measures for goals in the plan, and then implementation strategies. And I think I want to sort of focus on the next couple of slides anyway, just explaining what those implementation strategies need to be. Next slide. There are some very specific requirements that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities imposes on these plans. And then there are other strategies that communities can include. Nantucket always has always included in its housing production plans strategies that go beyond what the state asks for. Most towns we work in can do the sort of same thing. But there are these 5 strategies that have to be addressed. And one is to identify zoning districts or areas within your community where the town would seek to modify your current regulations to create what we call SHI eligible housing, which for ease of understanding is housing for people whose incomes are at or below 80% of median income. Identifying specific sites where the town will encourage comprehensive permit applications, obviously controlled by the town. Preferred housing characteristics in proposed developments. Identification of town-owned parcels for which you would commit to issuing RFPs for SHI eligible housing, and participation in regional collaborations addressing affordable housing needs. So those 5 bullets have to be addressed in the plan. And there are other strategies, as you will see, if you've read the plan, you can see that there are strategies to address other types of housing needs, because I think we all understand that Nantucket has a wide range of needs, not only housing for lower moderate income households. Next slide, please. So with that, I think we'll just do a high level look at sort of what the goals are and the strategies. So I referred earlier to sort of 1 or 2 year targets. And as you probably know, because you've benefited from this before, if the town creates at least 31 new SHI eligible units in a single year, you qualify for what's called housing plan certification. And essentially what that means is that for at least a year from the date that those units are created, which by law means when the permit issue is filed with the town clerk, when you create 31 units, you become eligible for certification, and that enables the Board of Appeals, if it receives a Chapter 40B comprehensive permit application, it can turn it down without being overturned by the Housing Appeals Committee. If the town creates 62 units in a single year, then you qualify for 2 years of certification. So it's essentially there's a 1 year or two year certification. You can't get more than 2 years, but you have had 2 year certifications before. And as I think you know, you have a current certification now. Next slide, please. So the goals in the plan are pretty straightforward. They are to preserve and expand your year-round housing stock. We're very aware that this is sort of an overarching issue for everybody in Nantucket, I think, at this point. Increasing housing opportunities at a mix of affordability levels. So some housing at the lower moderate income levels, some at workforce, some at higher, whatever the sort of income ranges are that actually prevail in Nantucket, but are not able to attain what is available on the market for sale or rent, to be able to focus on housing opportunities for those households. Diversifying housing types to support all your residents, revising policies and zoning to encourage responsible growth, coordinate financial, infrastructure, regulatory, and organizational resources to strengthen the town's local capacity, which I think really the town has just done a tremendous job building capacity. I go back with this, as I think Brooke probably remembers, long enough to when the town didn't have a housing office at all. In fact, the first housing plan that I worked on, there was no housing office. It was the Housing Trust. So you have done a lot to build capacity in Nantucket, and it is shown in the success that you have had in creating more housing and qualifying for housing plan certification along the way. Next slide, please. So just a high level look at strategies that are in the plan. We could obviously discuss, at greater detail, anything you have questions about. Using zoning requirements and community investments to produce affordable and, quote, deeply affordable housing, because there's a wide range of need on the island, and some of it is sort of workforce or higher level incomes, and some of it is still very, very, very low incomes. So there's quite a range of need to address. To continue to monitor and preserve the units that you already have on the subsidized housing inventory, to create and regularly update a town housing inventory, specifically a rental housing inventory, identifying potential sites for affordable housing, revising zoning to incentivize affordable housing with what we call cost offsets, which are essentially a way to encourage developers to create affordable units in new development. Streamlining the permitting process for housing, such as with pre-approved housing plans, continuing to implement the seasonal communities designation. Next slide, please. Developing options for creating and preserving year-round housing, requiring set-asides for year-round workforce housing, rehabilitating, reusing, and redeveloping underutilized properties, exploring alternative types of housing, strengthening the demolition delay bylaw, evaluating and strengthening year-round housing programs, including both inclusionary zoning requirements specifically for workforce housing and year-round housing, which right now is not really what you have, but it's very clear that it's something that needs to be discussed. And then supporting housing for seniors and people with disabilities. Next slide, please. Expanding infrastructure to enable housing growth, increase funding and leverage additional resources, strengthen partnerships and collaboration, continue to educate the public about housing needs and housing insecurity in Nantucket, and strengthening advocacy for housing. Conducting an annual review and evaluation of the HPP implementation and amend as update as needed. And I just want to point out, you don't have to wait 5 years to update your strategies in a housing production plan. Anytime you see an opportunity that perhaps could not have been foreseen when the plan was done, you should feel absolutely entitled to sort of pursue those new opportunities and not let the plan be a needless constraint on the choices that you make. Next slide, please. So again, just to remind everybody, there's an approval process that involves both local officials and the Commonwealth. First of all, the plan needs to be adopted by both the planning board and the select board. The town manager would need to send a letter to EOHLC identifying the dates of adoption by both boards, attesting that the submission attached to the cover letter constitutes the town's updated housing production plan, and specifically requesting approval of that plan. There should be a cover letter just introducing the whole project, probably from the housing department. And then just to point out that requests for housing plan certification require documentation of units created. So once you have an approved plan, which you've had before, and you are able to produce enough new housing to meet one of those 31 or 62 unit targets, then there's a process for submitting documentation that that's been done, which the housing department ably knows how to do, and to make a request for certification. So there's really sort of two tiers of approval. One is approving the plan, and the other is approving a request for certification. Approving the plan is simply a function of, this is the plan we've adopted, and this is what we're going to be operating with for the next 5 years. Certification is, and now we've actually created new units and we would like credit for it, so please certify our housing plan. Next slide, please. You can submit the plan to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for approval after it's adopted by the Planning Board and Select Board. Approval, as I just said, qualifies you to seek certification when you've met that minimum number, one of those two targets for new subsidized housing inventory eligible units. Certification enables the ZBA to deny unwanted comprehensive permits without having those decisions overturned by the Housing Appeals Committee. And just to point out, again, Nantucket has qualified for certification several times due to the town's sustained efforts and financial commitments from town meeting. So you've done well with this program in the past, and I think you have every reason to expect that you'll probably do so in the future. Next slide, please. As you know, we had informational meetings with all of you back in July. The housing production plan draft was submitted to the town the evening of July 20th. So for absolute accuracy, let's say July 21st is officially when it was available for public review. We had a meeting with the Housing Trust on August 4th for their approval. We were going to meet with the planning board. That didn't happen. So that's why you guys are assembled jointly tonight, which is great. This is actually how you did the last plan. You did it as a joint meeting. And then the plan is to submit the final housing plan, assuming it's approved, with any edits that we need to make, probably some additional photos and the community engagement summaries attached as an appendix, no later than the end of August, because your current plan expires at the end of September. Next slide. I think with that, we would encourage the board to ask any questions. Tony, my colleague who's on this call, who did the lion's share of the work on this plan, we can answer questions if you wish, or we'll take questions as directed by the staff who are in the room, because they can see you better than we can. So I think at that point, I'll kind of stop and turn this back to you, Brooke, for the meeting.
Okay, Erica, can you take down the presentation so I can see better? And first, I'm going to ask for any questions from the select board. We did have a chance to review this before. Jill?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about any sort of infrastructure changes or zoning changes that you all are considering. Since we have the planning board here, maybe that's something that you might consider going forward, or something that's coming up. I don't know if you have anything imminent or not, but since it's outlined as something to look at, I didn't know if it
We
was.
don't have anything imminent, I believe, but I am sure through a joint meeting that we will have in the future with the Affordable Housing Trust that those will come forward.
I will reiterate that there is an intention to have some joint meetings, and the implementation strategies really talk about all the boards and committees that are going to be involved in these discussions. But there are already ideas floating around of potential collaborative zoning articles and other articles. So, Matt?
Yeah, no, that's good to know, because some of the concerns, I think we 100% have to vote this tonight. But some of the concerns that were raised by various people were, sort of, we have to have the capacity to actually add this. And are we looking at whether we have the capacity, and how are we gonna do this and still keep the island livable? And so that was the, how, one of the only things we really all like sort of agreed upon last week on the Capitol was that we have to connect roads out here in the Mid-Island because of how the traffic is. That's something that hasn't been popular here for years, and we're realizing we have to. There's other things like that we have to address if we're going to add the number of houses that houses and units this projects we're going to add. And so I think that it's pretty important. It's part of what's in here. It's part of the requirement, is understanding what you're going to do and how you're going to do it so that you can afford it and you can, follow through. And so I think we vote this and then make sure that we roll up our sleeves and figure that out, because I think that's been missing. So.
And I want to make a context point. This is a housing production plan for a specific purpose, that is to comply with Chapter 40B and retain local control. The development of other housing units are out of the purview. These housing units contribute to the overall development of the island, but they are not the only question we have to answer. And actually, Judy and I were talking today on the phone, and she said the integration of traffic planning with housing development planning is essential. And that's really, those are the conversations we're starting to have, more integrated and collaborative conversations with planning and housing as a piece of overall island development in the coming years. So Dave, did you want to add something? Okay. Okay. Oh, Joe, I'll turn to planning board members too, if they'd like to. Joe?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. No, I think, the work that Tucker and others have started is really starting to roll forward. And I think that Dylan going forward, he was at the CPC this week and he made this whole presentation. And I think it's really amazing how quickly we've been able to move and start to gain traction. And I feel like the ball is now really moving quite well on getting housing available for the housing. But I do, as a planning board member, some of these things ask me a lot of questions. I think coming forward, we're going to have to look at zoning changes and how we kind of, in specific areas and check out, make sure water and sewer is all very important to us. But it's got to become a balance. And something Judy brought up was the demolition delay. And I think to the saving some of the houses, putting on looking from the HCC perspective, how do we save something? Well, I think that if a house can be moved and made for year-round housing, then I think we need to clear some overhead utilities, N-Grid, Verizon, Town Nantucket work together and put some of these intersections, put those wires underground so that the house movers have a quicker and easy way to kind of move along. Because I think that that's what really the houses run against, is that demolition delay runs that, oh, we can't get this across the island in a certain amount of time. And maybe sometimes there's a waiver for a house to be moved during the summer. But I think there's really a lot of things we got to be looking at. But I think of this as a whole, we just need to be looking at this housing plan, which I think is a really good start. But then also for us is look at, as a planning board, how does this impact other areas? Because there are specific sites that's been called out by Barrett. And I think that that's really important. We need to kind of be monitoring each one of these sites and then zooming out, and how does that impact a street section into this. And to Matt's point is making sure everything's in balance. And that's things we've been working on. And, Dave and I have been trying to put a list together, working with Leslie and Megan Trudell. So I just wanted to put that forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and I would add that the identification of particular pieces of property is sort of a hoop that you have to jump through on this. I think Judy can verify that nothing that we actually identified in the last plan ended up being developed for affordable housing. I think that's correct, but because other opportunities have come up through private sales and other things. So it's really just looking at all of what could be available, because we don't know what's in private holding that might come up. And we're doing a lot more small pocket developments in the housing space now too. So because we don't have a lot of large parcels left. in the community. Dylan, did you want to add anything? Okay.
Just here if you have questions.
Okay. Any other questions from the boards? And then I can open it to the public. I am going to ask people to keep it to 3 minutes. We have a heavy agenda tonight, and then we'll go for it. Val?
Thank you. I'm actually glad to hear that this is just an outline, because having read the 92 pages, I was quite shocked by some of the suggestions of jumping through hoops and eliminating input from boards like the HDC and changing zoning. I think it's really important to remember, I know Mid-Island is where most of this stuff is slated to go because we have water and sewer, but we're also a finite amount of space. And I think a lot of times it's a noble gesture to want to house everybody, but you also need to think about the people who are workforce, who live in Mid-Island and have lived in Mid-Island, and changing everything for us, including not accommodating cars. And I know that I say this a lot, but I'm going to continue to say it. Cars are a problem. Parking is a problem. When we built our houses, you had to accommodate what was reasonable parking then. Reasonable parking now doesn't exist. What the rents are or qualify for needs 2 people in every room. And I'm sorry, people who are workforce have cars. It's just a fact. So to think that because we're in this area and there's a free bus and all this other stuff, it's going to be, rainbows and butterflies. It's not. Cars are a real thing. And I have heard it from everyone this summer. It's been the worst summer for traffic. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. And let's see, I had everything lined up with pages from your thing, but basically I just want everyone to consider using common sense and practicality when this all comes into play. And infrastructure was another concern that I had. We keep hearing that we're in drought, people need to stop using water, and we're talking about, I was kind of horrified by this number, 17,000 something more possible units in this outline that was generated in this plan. And then I guess waiving fees, I think needs to be looked at. I understand when it's a totally affordable project in and of itself, but when somebody throws us a few bones like, here's our development, we'll throw you a couple, waive our fees. No, developers make money. Waive them for the 3 fees, the 3 units they give us, and the rest of them they have to pay, because I have been here before and that has happened. And let's see. I think it's nice. I think it's great that we want to altruistically help people who want to live here, but please do not disregard those of us who live here. Our quality of life is important too, and we are workforce, and I think that really needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Yep. Oops. I'm going to actually, hang on, I'm going to go to Burton Balkine online, who's had his hand up.
Thank you, Brooke, the Burton Balkine. I'm out of my lane here. I don't really know a lot about the housing production plan or about all your efforts, and I do appreciate the fact that you guys are trying to get as much affordable housing as possible without having 40Bs come in and do what they want. But I want to go to Matt and Val's points about capacity, and I just feel like not having any end goals in sight and having like a 17,000 possible units as like an end isn't realistic and doesn't really take into account what's happening on the island. I would like to see in this plan, I know it's a draft now, but in this plan to have some kind of guidance looking into the future of what we envision the island to look like. Because for a lot of us right now, Um, it's not working great. I mean, it's a beautiful place and I love it, but it's not working that great. I mean, ask someone that's trying to get their teeth cleaned or their dog groomed or their car fixed. I mean, so I know it's a little bit off topic, but I think in the scheme of things, having an idea of like what we're aiming for as far as production, and I know it has to in line with the state. So I just think that we need to keep some kind of goalpost in mind when we're considering all the production plan and where we're headed and how we're going to get there. Thank you very much for the time, Chairwoman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Abby Camp. I'm on the HDC. Just last night, we were made aware of the 92 pages. And we were all concerned about not having the HDC be a part of that designing of the buildings. So I'm just going to give one example that I saw in the pamphlet that just over here on Sparks and Pleasant Street is earmarked for a low-income housing. And if that doesn't go through the HDC, I'm afraid what that might look like. You're going to probably see something that you might find on the mainland. But we're very detailed oriented at the HDC, but maybe some of you think we go too slowly but to get it right and to make it work on Nantucket, I think you'll want to go through the HDC and not sort of overlook that. Thank you.
I'm going to respond to that. I don't think anyone is suggesting we're bypassing the HDC process in this at all. That is not what's in here. I'm not sure where that perception of what's in there, and I don't know, Leslie, can you don't want to touch that one.
I was coming down for something else, but
Yeah. We did talk about how to streamline permitting, but I don't see anything in there that says not taking housing to the HDC. Unless someone can read me something in there.
To give an example, this is something that's really floated. Sorry, Christy Ferrantella, the Municipal Housing Director. This is something that's been floating around the planning sphere for a while, especially in historic places along the Cape. It was a huge topic at the One Cape 2 years ago, is like pre-approved plans. And this is very popular with the gentlemen that are running Dreamline Modular. Is there a plan that says this specific building is pre-approved and just streamlines the approval process? So it's not, we're going to bypass HDC and go build whatever we want at a specific site. It's, could we have some sort of work group to work on a pre-approved plan so it goes through quicker? And it would be the same type of housing on different sites. So it is not to get rid of HDC's input. It's to figure out just a way to streamline a process to make it easier to permit. That is the underlying thing that I just want to make very clear.
And Christy, to the point, that would be in collaboration with the HDC.
Absolutely.
So-
And we have an implementation strategy plan matrix that is part of this. And we went through with our staff and Plus staff as to who would be kind of the main person to coordinate and secondary. And it was actually brought up last night at HDC that they'd like to be kind of named on that matrix. What we thought was start with staff, have staff kind of do some of the work and then bring it to the board, where I'm happy to have that conversation of if the HDC needs to actually lead that conversation or if they want staff to be helping to facilitate.
Can I make one more quick comment?
Sure, go ahead, Val.
With my HDC hat on. So I think what disturbed us the most was page 45, to suggest changing the special act legislation. Was very presumptuous, and that is in fact in the document. So I'm glad to hear it's just an outline. People were throwing things in there and everyone wrote it down. I'm glad to hear that. And we do have an ability to help the process along. If what's being presented to us meets the criteria, we put it on a consent agenda so it doesn't take as long. And you can't say house B and house A are going to fit in the same neighborhood, but we do our best to try and move things along so that 45 things can get voted on at the beginning of a meeting if they meet all the criteria and we don't have to discuss them. So I think there's a little misconception about a lot of what we do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Val. Megan Perry online. And then Leslie.
Thanks, Brooke. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful. So I read the 92 pages. I hope you all did as well. And Nantucket Tipping Point did submit a letter to this board. I believe it was in your packet. And I'm really hoping that you all took the time to read it because we took the time to analyze this report. I know both the select board and the planning board are all about build, 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 but 17,000 plus extra dwellings is a large number when we don't know if we can sustain that. I think your limiting factors, which you need to bring up to the state, is our water. And I mean clean drinking water. I don't mean drinking water that we put filters on because we have PFAS in our municipal wells or on private wells. I mean, clean drinking water is a limiting factor. I also think wastewater is a limiting factor. Our sewer capacity is a limiting factor. So I'm asking if the capacity figures could be looked at and brought up in this housing production plan that's put before the state, and ask them to also consider it because it is of concern to many people on island. We're on an island. We don't have mutual aid. We don't have other towns to get water from or to ship our wastewater from. I also think the streamline, that term kind of scares me. There are guidelines in place for a reason. Zoning is in place for a reason. Most of these things aren't arbitrary. They're there for our own protection and guardrails. And it scares me to think that we're going to streamline something in an effort to put in more density, more development. So I hope you all were able to not only read this report, but read the letter we submitted to you and take that into consideration before just rubber stamping this and sending it on to the state. So thank you very much for your time and consideration on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Megan. I'm going to go to Leslie and then Nat, if you want to say something, I'm going to ask you to go to the mic so you're on camera. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Hi, I'm Leslie Snell. I'm the Director of Planning. I just wanted to comment on the 17,000 units that's being thrown around. First of all, this plan is not suggesting the creation of 17,000 new dwelling units. That number is coming from a plan that was done for the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. This board had requested a build out for many years. We contracted with Weston and Sampson to do that. And that number is a 2050 year number of maximum build out. If every property on the island was built out to the absolute maximum, that's the prediction of the number of dwelling units that could be created. I don't believe our consultants or anyone on the planning commission or the planning board, and probably this board as well, believes that number is actually going to come to fruition, but it's a number that we need to have and we need to know about and we need to plan for with other things like the sewer master plan and water plans and housing production plans, and all of these plans tie together and they have to be, looked at individually and then considered collectively. But the 17,000 dwelling units, again, is not something that's coming from this plan as a suggestion.
Nat?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie.
Nat, just identify your name.
Nat Lowell, Planning Board and whatever else doing. I'm thank
3
you.
minutes, Nat.
Thank you for bringing that up. I just don't understand how the 17,000 thing popped into this, but that is the last thing we should be talking about without knowing what we're talking about. What Leslie just said is it's a ground cover analysis is what that is. What can be built? Forget about affordability, forget about everything else. What you are allowed to build on your land right now with ground cover is where that number comes from. That includes Quarter Mile Hill, inside of India Street, all that stuff up on the cliff mat that's got tons of ground cover that's never going to get built, but technically is plugged into that number. We have huge, gigantic pieces of land on Nantucket that are owned by individuals that will never get built. But technically, when you hire a company like Judy to do this analysis, well, they calculate those parcels as well. So that is like, we'll all be washed away or sunk or blown away or whatever when that ever happens, and it never will. So we need to come back to reality. And we talk about zoning changes. I'm not exactly sure where that is coming from either, because when the general audience hears zoning changes, they think of lug 2 to lug 1 or lug 1 to R20. That isn't what this is about. There are things like we've talked about, ground cover bonuses for covenants, because they run out of ground cover by like 500 square feet. Like these little numbers that doesn't really change zoning, but it is under zoning. That's, I think, where this stuff is coming from. It has nothing to do with, we've already done all the zoning changing that's pretty much going to happen, other than some small stuff. So that 17,000 thing was like concerning, and I'm glad Leslie explained it better than me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat. Dylan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing, which is that it wasn't Judy who did the 17,000, it was Weston Sampson. And Judy just pulled that as part of her due diligence as required by the state to evaluate the capacity and current infrastructure and availability for the housing production.
Okay. Thanks, Dylan. I'm going to go to
Can
Rick
I-
Atherton online.
Can I ask real quick?
Oh, yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Matt. And then
Is that
Rick.
17 number primary ADU or post?
Post.
No, I understand, but
Okay, no muttering. We need this at the mic. Leslie, can you
yeah,
help
just
answer
is
that
it pre or post? Because the primary ADU added one of those everywhere.
I believe we decided in that calculation to not include the ADUs because it included tertiary dwellings. And it was a little bit of a wash. And we were almost finished with the study when the ADUs came along.
Okay. Rick Atherton online. Rick, we can't hear you.
Okay, Brooke, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Great, great. Thank you for recognizing me. This may be a little, detailed, but in my quick review of the production plan, I got to page 72, and I think it was interesting. It talks about create and preserve year-round housing. And one of the bullet points gets at a question I think we've all talked about over the past several years. And one sentence in there says, together explore ways to preserve their homes, these are senior citizens, for continued year-round use and prevent them from being sold or converted to seasonal housing. That's a topic that has been on the town's agenda for the past several years in relation to investor or private owners of our housing stock. And I think it just reminded me, I'd like to ask that it may not be related to this housing production plan, but that the Affordable Housing Trust keeps track of transactions where such kind of disposition of year-round housing into non-year-round housing takes place. I think we would all be interested in the facts related to those kinds of transactions and see what their impact is. So that's the comment I wanted to make after I run across that page. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Penny?
Thank you. I'm Penny Dye, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Chair of the Nantucket Housing Authority Board. I want to just remind people of a couple of things. When the first significant funding was voted by town meeting, that first 25 million, it was voted for a twofold purpose. One, of course, was to create housing. The other part of that was to keep this community in safe harbor from unfriendly 40B developments. This is what this housing production plan is about. This is what enables us to have some modicum of local control. I also wanted to remind people that any zoning changes require approval by town meeting. We decide. This is not something that's going to be decided at a committee level or a select board level or a planning board level. This is town meeting decides. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Amy?
Amy, I'm Virgin. I know Matt said that 17,000 is a perspective of what could happen. But I also want people to realize that potentially 2 cars per unit, multiply that by 17,000. I mean, we already have an issue with traffic. That could happen. And the next generation, who's clearly not really very involved in town politics, my daughter's generation, they're going to be making decisions and making changes that are going to, could possibly get to that build out number. And I have concerns like Matt does about roads, our sewer, our water, and the traffic that you're already seeing now. I just can't imagine all these additional parking. And like Val had said earlier, yes, workforce housing, it's great that we have the shuttle buses, there's Uber, there's Lyft, there's all those things, but people drive cars. They go to the grocery store, they get more than they can take on the bus, they need a car. People are coming here seasonally to work for the summer, they're bringing cars. I see it, at the golf courses, at the restaurants we deliver to, where I work. So, I mean, it's just, it's tough on the infrastructure, and I worry. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Dave, did you want to add something? Okay, so the action requested tonight is approval of the HPP and by both the planning board and the select board. So I'm going to ask the planning board if they're prepared to.
And approve the submission to the EOHLC for certification.
Thank you for the correction, Erica. So with that, is the planning board ready to take action on this item? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I'd accept the motion from the board.
Okay, use the mic just for the record.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Nat, seconded by Liza. Nat, Liza, Joe.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well.
Okay, and the select board.
I'll move approval and submission.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Is that Bobby?
Yep, aye.
Okay, by roll call, Bobby, aye. Matt?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so that's 4-0, Erica. Thank you very much. And I want to thank all the members of the community who participated in this process, gave their input along the way, and gratitude to the many departments who participated in this process as well. Certainly our housing staff and the Barrett Planning Group for, I mean, I know I attended a bunch of things, and I know I didn't attend close to all of them. So appreciate everyone's participation, and onward with certification and remaining in safe harbor, which is the ultimately getting housing for year-rounders, affordable and attainable, and staying in safe harbor so it's in our control is the whole purpose of this. So thanks, everybody. Okay, and we need to adjourn the planning board meeting.
Madam Chair,
Oh, Dylan?
can I just say thank you to the boards, and also, we're in the housing department are very grateful for the community input. It's clearly driven by the fact that we all care very much about the community that we live in. And in 5 years, when we're doing this again, we look forward to having another robust conversation about it. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes at the select board meeting, the work that we're doing in our office, looking at conservation, transportation, parking, isn't always totally forward because we're the housing department. But our emails and phones are always open, and we hope to continue collaborating. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dylan.
Brooke,
Yes.
may I just ask a question, Judy Barrett?
Sure.
Do you want us to prepare the letter for of transmittal to EOHLC and to prepare a draft of it for you folks?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, all right, we can do that tomorrow.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Judy. Okay, planning board, do you want to adjourn?
Accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Nat, seconded by Liza. Nat, Liza, Joe.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, planning board. Okay.
Thank you.
These joint meetings confuse the heck out of me. Okay, housing department is up again with regard to waivers of sewer connection fees. Christy, you up?
Evening. The first item on your agenda is a request for approval of waivers of sewer connection fees and sewer capacity fees for 2 homeownership units restricted at 125% of area median income or less for 7 Dooley Court. In your packet, you'll see the request letter from Housing Nantucket. They are the purchasers of 7 Dooley Court, which is an existing 4-bedroom home. And they have approved plans from the planning department to do what we've called a double covenant. They'll create 250% AMI units and be able to subdivide into 3 separate homeownership lots. 2 of those units will be at 150% AMI, as I just mentioned, with the existing home being sold at a 250% AMI. While Housing Nantucket requested both the sewer waiver and connection fees to be waived at 50%, past practice and policy has only waived the sewer connection fee. So in coordination with the sewer department and talking with the sewer director, our recommendation was to waive 50% of the connection fee only. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, so any questions from the board or a motion?
Yeah, can you tell me how much that is, Christy?
That is a total waiver of $4,000.
Okay, board?
I'll move approval as per policy.
Okay, so approval of the waiver of the sewer connection fee
Of
only.
just the sewer,
Okay.
as recommended. yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, by roll call, Matt?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Bobby?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that's 4-0. And on to the similar one for a different property.
Yes. So the next item on your agenda is a request for approval of waivers of sewer connection fees and sewer capacity fees for 3 rental dwelling units restricted to 125% of area median income at 75B Old South Road. This is also in your packet, a request from Housing Nantucket. They again requested the waiver of both the sewer connection and the sewer capacity fee. In, again, coordination with the sewer department, we recommended the waiver of the connection fee only. Under that recommendation, the town would waive the $12,000 in connection fees, while Housing Nantucket would remain responsible for the $6,705.60 in capacity fees. Along with this, we've just asked that the select board consider a future agenda item to review your sewer waiver policy, as we're getting more and more requests around year-round housing and things that are not necessarily restricted to 80% AMI. And the housing department would just request being able to bring this back for a future, just to talk about the sewer policy in general.
Okay, so Christy, can you help me with the motion on this? This would be a waiver of,
I'll write it down for you.
thank you. Just make sure we're doing
The sewer department and housing department recommends a waiver of the connection fee only.
Okay.
And in your, sorry, in your recommendation, it says 100% waiver versus 50% on the last one?
Correct.
Okay.
So why is it 100% on this one and not 50%?
These are for rentals and the other one was for home ownership.
I have one other question just about the AMI. Is that part of the board policy?
Yes.
That it's at 125? It's not over that? It's not at 150? Does it go up to 250?
So the current sewer waiver policy has board discretion at different tiers, but it stops at 175% of AMI. And there's nothing in the policy around deed restricted year-round housing. So that's why in reviewing this and discussions, we thought it would be best to review the sewer policy at a future agenda, as we've usually declined those requests at the staff level because they're not in line with the policy.
So to answer your question, this request is in line with the established policy. And we should probably review the policy at some point. So.
I'll move approval in line with policy.
Can I just ask one? And yes, that's fine for us to talk about it later, but it,
Second for discussion and then
Yeah.
just. proceed.
second for discussion.
Okay.
So if this, I guess I'm trying to ask, why are we pitting a homeowner against the rentals?
Because they receive funds back from the sale of the homes in their total construction budget. And so in just trying to look at the past practice is what we've done on covenant lots in the past is that you waive 50%. On rental units in the past, you've waived 100%. So we're trying to be consistent across different types of development projects.
Right, but then the homeowner for the rentals, it's housing Nantucket? Gotcha. Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Okay.
I think maybe part of the other reason was rentals we get on the shy list, we get 100% if I'm correct.
On this development, we do not, but it is something that we have been discussing because these are 3 new units that they're putting out on 75 Old South Road, and they have 2 other existing units, and we have been in discussion around the possibility of restricting one of those down to 80 so that all of the units count.
Right, so there is an advantage if we can have a rental. Some aren't at 80, but 25% is, and then they all count. So I think part of what we were thinking about when we did this back in the day was to incentivize more rentals because they all count to the shy and we get to that number quicker. So I think that was part of it. When we actually do have the conversation of the cost, it's sort of, it's easy to go, geez, we don't want to, we want to waive it because we want more people. But at some point, you hit a tipping point where you waive it so much that it's costing those people even more money to pay out of pocket. So you waive it for enough people and then everybody that, including the people that are on it, are paying even more. So we've got to really look at the total picture when we balance this. And it was interesting that Chuck Barone from Strong Towns came and he, I've read a couple of his books now and he says to be very careful about waiving because we already don't collect enough money. In most towns don't collect enough money as it is. And so the more that you're waiving, the further behind you're putting yourself. So we really have to look at this closely if we're going to do this. Thank you.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to take a roll call vote. Matt?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Bobby?
Aye.
Okay, and I'm going to vote aye, and I'm going to reiterate something that I've said, which was I want us to consider a policy of using Affordable Housing Trust funds to pay these fees rather than waiving them. I think it's just, it's a, Peter Paul pocket kind of thing, but I think maybe in the long run, if we're supporting affordable and attainable housing, we're doing it with the funds that are voted for that rather than burdening the other ratepayers with that cost. So got to get this on.
Brooke, if you want to make that a motion, not a second.
No, not yet. We're going to do it as part of a larger conversation, Bobby, but I like your enthusiasm. Thanks. Because it's not agended. So, okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Up next is town clerk with several requests. Nancy?
Thank you. Nancy Holmes, Town Clerk. I think you'll see that most of these requests are fairly routine town clerk type requests, the approval of the warrant for the September 1st state primary, the reappointment of a couple of the registrars, the annual reappointment of the election workers, and the last one being election constable request for Bo Almodovar, which I think it goes without saying I recommend. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we need separate motions on these or can we bundle them, do you think? Procedural.
If you're good with approving them all, I think you can bundle them.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the request from the town clerk?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Jill?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Bobby?
Yeah, aye.
Thank you, and I vote aye. That's 4-0. Thank you to everyone who's stepping up to serve.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for organizing, Nancy. Okay, next up, I believe we're up to Health and Human Services. And Jericho Mealy, our director, is going to bring this item forward.
Yes, this is the Health and Human Services Comprehensive Needs Assessment Report, which we are hoping to get adopted by the town of Nantucket. This project originated in spring of 25, I believe, is when we went through the procurement process. We began primary data collection in August of 25, and we have closed data collection and began analysis in 26. The project was in the amount of $66,000 for the contract to Kulik Strategic. It was part of the strategic, it was part of the county funds, and it was included as a follow-up to a Health and Human Services internal review done in the previous year. It represents the first comprehensive human services needs assessment done on the town of Nantucket. I believe the first, or the only of this, the previous one of this type was in 2000, the early 2000s, possibly 2008. It's not in my head right now. It is intended to provide a empiric basis for priority setting in the human services grants. It also is a useful source of information for the nonprofits on Nantucket as they search for grant funding from a variety of different sources. And it also gives us a recent benchmark so that we can look at changes in the human services, both in terms of delivery and outcomes. With that said, I believe Veronica Bolchek, who is online and is the chair of the Contract Review Committee and the Council for Human Services, wanted to cue things up. And then we have Marcos Alcorn, who is the contractor who was with Kulik to do the actual research and analysis.
Okay, thank you, Jericho. As Jericho said, I'm Veronica Bolchuk, Chair of CHS and CRC, and I first want to thank the Select Board for allowing us this time this evening to present the study. And I also want to thank the Select Board for supporting this effort. As Jericho just said, it hasn't been done in many years, and the results will help us better shape our health and human services provided to our community. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Marcus Alcorn from Kulik Strategic Advisors for an overview of the study.
Thank you, Veronica, and thank you to the Select Board for having us here over. Let's see, I'm trying to display my screen because I made a couple of changes to this presentation. So let me know if you can see my screen. So I will only take a couple of minutes of your time. A lot of the presentation and information is really in the appendix side of this. But as Jericho said, this was a project that initially you put out for an RFP back in March of 2025, contracted in the summer, and we started in August, September, with really taking the vast majority of the time with looking at collecting input from your residents. We did an exhausting literature review, which was looking at any existing research. We developed 3 community profiles, a demographic, socioeconomic, and a health status profile for the town of Nantucket. And so between October 1st was the first time that we were on site till May 4th, we collected resident input from resident surveys, and this was key informant interviews. Some of your providers participated in this process on one-on-one discussion guides. We hosted some focus groups and then resident input as well. This led to input from over 679 residents or individuals. This was an astonishing turnout of people. Some of the individuals for the key informant interviews were the steering committees, senior centers, individuals working at food pantry, Interfaith, the hospital, a really wide breadth presentation of your human services. 3 focus groups with 33 individuals with really a lot of the findings there was more on the nutrition side, access to healthier, more affordable food, access to or assistance with utility. A big one was early childcare. really that came out heavy as far as an area of need for Nantucket, as many parents are choosing and finding difficulties with having or wanting to have children. And then behavioral health, and here we lumped mental health and substance use. We had 15 providers surveys, which really kind of mimic a lot of the same findings that we had from our focus group and key informant interviews. But then the big star here was the 621 residents who participated in this research. 551, close to 600 of them were in English. We did have some individuals in Spanish and Portuguese, with really an oversampling here of 163% over our sample goal, which was 382 residents. A big thing that really came out, the survey was broken down into 3 main sections with a total of 24 questions. And one of the sections really was looking at what is the quality of life in Nantucket. And there is a stark difference between what people individual to be considered to be quality of life or good quality of life for those individuals who are white or Caucasian, compared to the bottom table here, which is our Hispanic population. And I know that this is something that's happening really across the country. Fear. This was really fairly after a couple of rates that happened on island. But you can see a stark difference between what individuals consider to be a quality of life for these 2 different group of people on island. So what does this really all mean? And I know that I will be handing this to Tara and Sarah in a couple of minutes, but on the top table here, you see for the different human services, you see the different barriers that individuals reported encountering. The ones in gray, those are the ones that everyone at every single health service or just human service reported a barrier. We see eligibility and perception of quality as really your top 2, followed by capacity, which was waiting to get attached to a physician, a provider, needing services, case management. And then the opposite side of it really is the not having enough qualified providers, the struggle to find someone on island that could provide that service. And then the ones in pink were your third kind of barriers that were your top ones, which was cost, relatively expensive to really get any services online on island, and then transportation. At the time of this survey, there was a lot of discussion as to whether if the public transit system was going to continue to be funded or not. So there was a lot of just discussion among residents as far as on-island transportation. The bottom table here, it just shows you as individuals age on island, the need of services aged with them, and they access services at different times. Your younger generation really was more focused on education and training. As they move to their 20s and 30s, is that early child care, housing, mental health. But then as they start aging more, they go into that disability, the transportation, those services that are needed as you're aging in place. And here you see really our final slide is really what really were the top barriers or services that were mostly needed here. And when we combine, again, mental health and substance use, that is 44.4%. We asked that question separate during the resident survey just because individuals can consider that separate. But as far as our gaps, we had mental health, behavioral health, early child care, education and training, and disability being your top 4 needs as far as gaps in service. That's all the time I have. In the appendix, you have a more detailed breakdown of the resident survey and individuals that participated. Tara, Sarah, Veronica, hand it back to you. Thank you to the board for having us and having me present to you.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. What I'd like to do is now introduce Tara Ristiri and Sarah Wright of our Council for Human Services, both vice chairs, current and past, and also Jericho, our Deputy Director of the Town of Nantucket Health and Human Services. Tara, can you lead with a presentation of the executive overview?
And I just want to very briefly mention, in the packet, there's the report itself, there's an executive summary, and then there's some additional information as well.
Yeah, probably one of the key pieces of this would be the 2-page executive overview. It really kind of brings everything down to kind of nuts and bolts. But if I could have the first slide, please. Yes, yes, please. Thank you.
Not that one. If you allow me to present, I'll pull it up.
She's good at this.
Oh, there it is.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm Tara Ristiri. Good evening, everybody. So today we're presenting the findings, the key findings from Nantucket's 25-26 Community Needs Assessment, and importantly, how those findings inform our funding strategies going forward. As it was mentioned, this is a significant community engagement effort involving 621 individual residents, 15 service providers, 33 focus groups, and 10 key informants. This was a number that was really exceeded our expectations. The key part of this is that what it does is it gives us evidence-based picture of where the needs are, where the town's investment can have the greatest impact. Next slide, please. So this slide really represents actually something that we've done in the past and what we're going forward with, how Human Services is going to move forward. The Department of Human Services, Council for Human Services, Contract Review Committee, and our community partners each have distinct responsibilities, but we're increasingly working together as a coordinated network. The department provides leadership and service delivery. The council focuses on planning, community needs, and advocacy. The Contract Review Committee provides fiscal stewardship and accountability. And our nonprofit partners, of course, are the organizations delivering many of these services in the community. The important point is that all Nantucket residents benefit from this collaboration, even if they never personally use the services. It's a strong human service network that does strengthen the entire community. Next slide, please. So I'm not reading bullets. After 10 months of research, providers and residents reached essentially the same conclusion. Nantucket has committed organizations doing important work. The opportunity is to make the overall system better by better coordinated, easier to navigate, and more accessibility. What struck us was the consistency that we found between what providers told us and what residents were experiencing. Providers aren't telling us that Nantucket needs more programs. That's not what they're saying. They're saying that the existing network needs to work better as a system and coordinate better. And residents reinforce that message to us. Their responses show that the needs span many parts of everyday life, from supporting children and families to helping people remain in the workforce and connecting vulnerable residents with essential services needed. Taken together, the message is clear. We have many of the right organizations and services in place. The opportunity now is to strengthen those connections, build capacity where it is needed, and make the system easier for residents to understand and to navigate. Awareness itself is an issue. 23.1% of those residents surveyed did not even know that human services were available to them. That's the problem. So one of the strongest messages from the assessment is that it's not simply about creating programs. It's about, again, strengthening the network, connecting people to services, improving that coordination, increasing capacity, and making sure residents know where to turn when they actually need the help. Next slide, please. So this brings us to funding. While the need for services and the cost of providing them has increased, Nantucket Human Services funding has not increased since 2020. Over that same period of time, Massachusetts CPI has increased 21.5%. So even though the appropriation has remained consistent and constant in nominal dollars, the actual purchasing power has declined significantly. Our nonprofit partners are being asked to meet today's community needs with funding that buys considerably less than it did 6 years ago. This is a fundamental issue that is the foundation of our funding request and what it's intending to address. Next slide, please. We all know Nantucket costs have been increasing. We feel that Massachusetts CPI does not fully capture the financial environment in which Nantucket itself and its organizations need to operate. As the slide shows, the estimate increases in many of the costs that directly affect service providers. It's been more considerable than the state alone. Employee salaries have an increase from between 20 to 40%. Food has increased 22 to 30%. Utilities, 20 to 35%. Construction and maintenance, 40 to 60%. And of course, we know that housing costs have also increased dramatically, but that's not part of our analysis. These organizations have to compete for employees and operate programs at the same high cost environment as every other Nantucket employer. Our providers are feeling those same increases in costs, and it really does affect what we are able to do. So level funding doesn't mean maintaining the same level of service. In real terms, it means fewer resources available to serve our community. Next slide, please. Our request. So this brings us to our recommendations. What we are requesting is $825,000 for human services grants, $175,000 for substance misuse, for a combined annual appropriation of $1 million. We believe that this is measured and it's responsible. The human services increase is not intended to create a large new government structure. It's intended to primarily restore the purchasing power and strengthen that nonprofit network that is already serving the community of Nantucket. And importantly, increased investment is being accompanied by increased accountability. Following the 2024 Human Services evaluation that was completed independently, the Council for Human Services, our contract review committee, have strengthened the grant process through an updated evaluation criteria, enhanced data collection, improved outcome measurements, greater alignment between funding decisions, and documented community priorities. So we now have the research identifying the needs, a stronger process for evaluating where the money goes, and a better mechanism for measuring those results. The community has told us what it needs. We have strengthened the process. We are now asking the town's investment be aligned with those documented needs of the people in this community. Our goal is a stronger, more coordinated, and more accountable human services network, and ultimately a thriving Nantucket. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. I just want to make it clear when we're asking for the funding increase. Right now, our human services grants have been at $650,000, so we're looking to increase it to $825,000 for an overall of $1 million. Do we have any questions from the board that either Marcos or Jericho or one of us can answer?
Jill?
No, go ahead.
Jericho, can you remind me, it's been a while since I was on that committee. I'm just looking at an old warrant, so this is from 2023. How much of these funds can go to actual operations and salaries?
That varies. One of the issues that came up over time was that the main gap for most of these organizations is operational funding. And so to acknowledge that as being a real concern, what we did is we came up with a capacity or operational grant as part of kind of aligning the grant process with reality. There is no hard limit on that. That is taken as part of the evaluation rubric for the proposal that's being given. So that is part of the way that we score and grade and evaluate the different proposals, but there's not a particular hard limit.
So you really can give for either. I thought there was issues with us giving for people's salaries in particular, but
nope, those were
it can just
policy.
go, yeah. And with that, it sounds like you're having to really scrutinize the businesses of each one of these as a result of that too. So it's quite time and time consuming.
It is a very heavy lift for the members of the contract review committee. It involves several hundred pages worth of grant applications. Part of the streamlining process, because this process was originally developed in the late 80s, I believe, when the CRC was originally funded. So a core chunk of this is kind of enabled by improvements and advances in grant allocation, as well as a whole bunch of more granular metrics that allow people to make a better estimate of what the value of the grant is, and then a direct correlation to how we measure outcomes for programs and projects overall. A big issue with these grants has been that there is an enormous amount of data in the reporting in all of the various needs, the allocation of funding by agencies for these programs, and a lot of that data is captured in a handwritten PDF from the late 80s or 90s that was scanned in as part of an archiving project. So one of the areas we're looking at is making the modern data collection analysis tools be integrated into the grant process so that the reporting is itself data collection. Those are outputs that came from the Granicus study and things that we've seen from other communities doing it. It is always going to be a moving target. One of the issues with this type of human service funding is that the needs were not completely mapped out, and there wasn't a effective way to know. We were kind of eyeballing it or going by our gut to a large extent. At the moment, we're trying to make sure that the empirical data collection on the needs assessment can then be used to mark where we allocate money, and then we can, if there is a follow-up study or if there are smaller studies on specific sectors of human services, that we can then see if that has been a change based on the investment in those particular sectors.
I'm just going to make note that Mr. DaCosta has arrived. Welcome. That's all right. You were here.
And just to add to that, one of the main things that we added to our rubric is really evaluating where the needs align, and we score it that way. So where do the needs align with priorities that we have set through our mission and also through the Council for Human Services. So, that's why this is so important to do, because it then allows us to really think about that impact.
So on that, how are you going to include early childcare? Because that really, it doesn't really align with the grants you've been giving out.
So a number of those grants have been going to early childcare facilities. Small Friends is a great example of it.
Yeah, they
and
do.
One of the ways that we've been using the CRC funding is to do, and I default to this particular metaphor, a sort of force multiplication. A major bottleneck for the providers of pre-K and other early childhood services is staffing around the teachers and the ratios necessary to keep your ECC licensing and all of those kind of nitty-gritty logistics. So we've granted funding that has facilitated additional tuition incentives for staff to allow them to have children in childcare that then allows them to provide childcare to a larger number of people, as well as, I think there have been a variety of systemic approach, non-systemic, but acute addressing particular needs. At one point in CRC, funding was provided to extend childcare for an additional hour in the day to allow people to go and come from work in a more streamlined fashion. The scale of early childhood is significantly in excess of the CRC funding, and it's not an appropriate use of the CRC funding to go directly to one particular element. But one of the things that this study has allowed us to do is connect with private funders and private philanthropy. Currently, the town is operating in partnership with the Community Foundation for Nantucket to do a pre-K subsidy and study pilot program this year. And so this lets us direct the town funding directly to very specific structural changes that can enable significantly more service provision on a capacity side, while also addressing the demand side by fully mapping out the number of people who are going and the number of children who are going to different pre-K programs, and then allowing us to track the potential enrollments for those, as well as incentivize organizations to participate in a market that was underserved in the past. Hopefully this was also aligned with expanded coordination and collaboration with private funders such as the Golf Club and CFN, as well as hopefully a shared priority list across different funding sources that allow us to most effectively allocate funding.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Buddy?
Pardon my tardiness. I was diligently listening the whole time I was gone. Did I hear you say that your total budget is $600 and something thousand a year?
So the contract review committee funding is $650,000. There's an additional $175,000, which is for substance misuse programming. Those come from two different funding sources. Originally, the substance misuse funding came from impact fees that were assessed from the various dispensaries operating on the island. Currently, they are from a combination of strategic stabilization fund, recreational cannabis sales, and I believe from the opioid settlements that are coming through.
I gotta say, I'm frankly appalled that we spend money on shellfish management plans, harbor management plans. We measure how much cocaine's in the wastewater in this town, which doesn't mean a damn thing because the people that are using it are still going to keep using it, and we don't give you any money. And we need child care. And how about we cut back on the $1 million a year for coastal resiliency and we give it to human services, because this is the core of our island. These are the people that are struggling week to week to make a paycheck. I talk to these kids all the time. Daycare kills them. They work all week. One of the two parents works all week to pay for daycare. And we throw a measly $600,000 at it. This is ridiculous. We need to fix this. And we need to figure out other places where we can take money from and give it to this department. As long as it's used properly, this should be number one priority for us, I think, personally. When I look at all these other things that we spend money on, this should jump to the top of the list.
I'm certainly not going to argue with you on that. One of the things that I think is important, though, is that a lot of these problems aren't solved purely by adding additional funding. The funding needs to be scaled up in concert with the capacity of the agencies to deliver services, and they also need to be structured in a way that we're serving actual needs. Sorry.
I agree. And my big thing is daycare and child service, because if we're going to retain the young people on this island and the people that we're building all this housing for, we need to figure out a way for their children to be taken care of so they can go to work. And, yeah, I know. So we need, whether it's through the community school or the school or, the small friends in these different places, they're at capacity. We need to add more places. We have a lot more people living here than we did 10 years ago, and we need to figure out ways to make this work. And this is the kind of thing that I think we should really try to work on through the private sector and through the town to, if we can maybe supply the space, I don't know, but I'm with you.
There's a lot of different, we are going to learn an enormous amount from this pilot program. One of the ways that it's structured takes advantage of the private funding source to make to give us information that we can use as part of the municipal budgeting process, should that be the path forward. There's also ways for us to align with state incentives that are coming through. Part of the childcare program has been kind of a need heavily identified at the governor's office. There's a significant amount of advocacy working in this space, but what we're doing now is we're measuring the shape of the problem, the shape of the system, and we're figuring out how people are needing service, what service we can expect. A core component and a core limiting factor on this is the licensing process. We have to support a licensing process. We have to make sure that these facilities are safe and inspected and regularly done. We have a lot of providers really, really delivering excellent service on that. But part of that is going to come with a need to work with enabling staff housing. Figuring out methods to combine resources so that we get a maximum approach. Part of it's going to have to come through expansion of the school district's early childhood program. Many hands make light work. So we'll definitely we're looking to partner directly with private organizations, nonprofits, private philanthropy, municipal funding, state incentives. A big chunk of this needs assessment gives us the evidence, the data that will support our claims and our needs and make sure that we are adequately serving the needs of early childhood education and then all of the other needs on the island too. The island is there is a number of factors on the island that make it difficult to get to services, to get specialists, all of those things. And we need to have a broad approach because early childhood care is an enormous issue, but behavioral health and substance misuse and utilities support, rental assistance, all of those things are vital parts of the safety net that make sure that Nantucket can serve the people who live and work here.
Jericho. Matt, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm good.
I just want to say, I was literally tearing up. You guys, I don't know how many people know that I've been involved in this for years, and the talk about collaboration, the understanding that sometimes it's not about funding the program, it's about funding the people that make the program work. The whole shift in how we approach supporting human services in our community with dollars. It's much easier for a nonprofit to raise dollars for a program than it is to raise for a facility or an electric bill or staff housing. And so if we can pivot to supporting the parts that are hard to fundraise philanthropically, to kickstart things, to kickstart collaborative efforts, to have the resources to go after these other funding sources that are out there that these organizations don't have the time to go out and write grants and all of that. So the way we support our human services program is going to change a lot from what Jill and I the way we were doing it on the CRC, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I'm so grateful that this needs assessment happened, that we have data to support those grant applications, to support, asking for funding at the state level, all of those things. This is going to be a game changer. And I agree that taking care of the people who struggle the most in our community from a human services perspective is a bellwether of who we are as a community. And I've been talking about this for years, and I'm so grateful for all the work that went into this. And I think this board can have conversations in the budget process about what we can do. But the fact that you have a plan for different approaches, not the same old, to me is the most enlightening and exciting thing that I've heard out of this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a very brief shout out to all of the people who responded to this survey, all the people who supported it, the various contractors and consultants. This was a lot of work done by a lot of people who that I hope will benefit a lot of people as well.
Okay.
I would encourage people to apply to serve on Council for Human Services and CRC. If you're out there, this is amazing work. Please step up.
And I would just go back to that 23.1% of people who had no idea that there were services available. I mean, we need to figure out how to expand our reach within the community across the border to let people know that there are services available to them.
Amy, did you want to add something?
Just real quick,
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Amy. I just want to say that that was a phenomenal presentation, and I agree with Bobby. I've got a coworker who has 2 children under the age of 3, and it's $825 a week, and she's making the choice whether or not she comes back from maternity leave. And, you know, with all of the disruptions at the state level with women and infant and children that are helping these people with assistance that's kind of been closed off for a while they, I don't know, audit their system, it's putting a lot of people at a disadvantage. And so if we as a community can help our own, I think it's a fabulous idea. And I'd love to see their budget go to 2 million if we could get those kind of services put in place, because I mean, people are deciding whether they can afford to stay in their semi reasonable or accommodated apartments and rentals, downgrading into lesser quality living styles because they can't afford the childcare. And are they not eating properly because they're now having to pay $800 a week for childcare and rent and health insurance and all those things that just, you know, we take for granted when you're not in that situation. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy. And I could talk about this all night, but we do have a few more things on the agenda. I just wanted to thank you all. Last.
All right.
Oh, I do? Sorry. Mary Longacre?
Thank you, Mary Longacre. I was one of the respondents to the survey, but it took about 6 noticing, events before I realized that it was something that it was appropriate for me to respond to, because human services has no definition. And this presentation has been great because it shows, what all of that encompasses. But my recommendation would be the first step you need to let people know that help is available is to tell people what that means. I mean, human services does not communicate anything to most people, I believe. And so, get the word out that that what it is you do and what it is under that umbrella and what these services are. Because I think that's probably the biggest barrier is that the terminology that is so frequently used doesn't connect to what people would believe they need.
Thanks, Mary.
And my very
Brooke,
belaboring the point possibly is that of that 22% that we noted that used, that did not realize there was human services available on Nantucket, many of them were using human services. So us communicating what human services is and how to get access to it is a very important part of what we're doing. And while I have the mic, we have a directory that has our human services in it. You can find it at accares.net, and that has a lot of our services. We're always working on that to expand it. Thank you.
Thanks for that shout out. Okay. Thanks,
Brooke,
everybody.
if I can.
Veronica, go ahead.
Okay. If I can just be on the tail of that, we have wonderful messages that are coming out from our communications department that are being used, I think, effectively on Instagram. And I would love to be able to get some of that time to explain human services. And Mary, thank you for pointing out if you don't know what human services, if you don't understand what human services is. So I would like to put a shout out if we can potentially use that platform. And if I can just thank KSA, Marcos Alcorn, and Tracy Kulik for working with you. Has been a pleasure, and it really takes a village, and thank you. Our work group from CHS and CRC, Sarah Wright, Joanna Roach, and Tara for putting together the presentation with myself, the executive overview. I want to thank the Nantucket community for their participation in the study, and also our community providers. It takes a village. And finally, thanking the select board for supporting not only the Reftelis study that was done in 2024, leading to our needs assessment. So we hope that all of this information can be used to better the services that we can provide for our community. A healthy community means you have to have healthy residents, whether it is behavioral health, physical health, childcare, housing, food, et cetera. It goes down the line. So thank you very much, and thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you, Veronica. And I just want you to know the communications director's in the back of the room here, and she smiled when you asked about Instagram.
you.
So, okay. Great. Moving on. Next up on the agenda is request for select board resolutions to authorize town manager or deputy town managers to file applications, execute agreements, and any and all other actions necessary for the town of Nantucket to A, secure grants and loans for community septic loan program, and B, secure such grants or loans for planning or construction of water pollution abatement projects. And there's more language in there, but I'm not going to read it. So Libby, do you want to?
We have a couple of people online if the board has any questions about these specific programs, but both of them have been before, and the state requires this action.
Any questions from the board or a motion?
I move approval.
Is that for A and B?
A and B, yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, by roll. No, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, no roll call. Great. That's 4-0. Thank you. Okay, next up is licensing, liquor license compliance hearing pursuant to MGL 138, Chapter 138, Section 64 for Mingo Corporation, DBA The Muse, Michael O'Reilly, manager for premises located at 45 Surfside Road for sale or delivery of alcoholic beverages to persons under 21 years of age on multiple dates. And I'm going to turn it to my colleague. Jill needs to make a statement first.
I'm an elected member of the select board of the town of Nantucket. As a resident of the island, I frequent various food, beverage, and entertainment establishments, including the Muse. Tonight, there's an item on the agenda for the select board meeting involving the Muse. I will act on that matter based upon the law and the facts and without regard to any personal interests. Thank you.
Mr. Meerberg, I'm going to ask the licensing manager to speak first.
I'm sorry to take your podium. My apologies. How are you, Amy?
Thank you. Sorry, we come from upstairs, thought I had more time. I believe, Erica, do we have to do a swearing in that we've done in the past? It's not necessary, but I know town council always advises that anyone that is going to give testimony swears in.
So, according to your disciplinary hearing procedure that's in the packet, it says that the chair calls the hearing to order, reads the notice, and swears in the witnesses.
Yeah.
Indeed. Okay. If you're intending to speak as a witness in this procedure, I can't see because of the people standing. Anyone back there also planning? No? Okay. So if you could just raise your right hand and swear that you will tell the truth and only the truth, so help you God.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Madam
Amy?
Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, does she need to also read in the notice?
I can read that information here.
Okay.
If you will. Okay. So before testimony begins, I wanted to briefly outline the matter before the board this evening and the procedure for the hearing. As we mentioned, this is a disciplinary hearing concerning the annual all alcoholic beverages restaurant license held by Mingo Corporation, DBA The Muse.
Gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind sitting down while she's speaking, that would be great. I think it's a little awkward to have someone hanging over your shoulder. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Again, for the Muse for premises located at 44, Surfside Road with Michael O'Reilly as the approved manager. The purpose of tonight's hearing is for the Select Board acting as a local licensing authority to hear evidence concerning alleged violations of Massachusetts liquor law and the town's alcoholic beverage licensing regulations, and to determine two things. First, whether the violations as listed occurred, and secondly, if violations are found, what disciplinary action is appropriate. That is the main goal for this evening. It's an evidentiary hearing and should be treated accordingly. The board's decision must be based upon the evidence and testimony presented in the packet and presented this evening. The procedure, the town, myself as licensing administrator will present this case first, including any questions that you may have. We also have the chief of police, Chief Casper, and Officer Deuce, who submitted the report that is in your packet this evening. The licensee and his counsel, Mr. Merberg, will then have the opportunity to respond, present evidence and witnesses, and question the town through the chair. And board, of course, may ask questions of either party. Once all testimony and evidence has been received, the board should formally close the evidentiary portion of the hearing. At that point, no additional testimony or documents should be accepted after that point. I'm happy to come back at that time and review procedures. So the
Amy,
charge, yes.
Can you hold on 1 second?
Sure.
Do you mind swearing in Officer Deuce?
Yeah, Officer Deuce, could you just raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth?
Nothing but.
Nothing
And
but
nothing
the
but the
truth.
truth, so help you God. I feel like I'm on TV. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now the charges before the board. The charges arise from NPD report 26-008161 and involve events occurring on 4 separate dates: June the 23rd of 26, June the 24th of 2026, June the 25th, and July 13th of 2026. The town has brought 14 counts of sale or delivery of alcoholic beverages to persons under 21 under MGL Chapter 138, Section 34, and Chapter 207 of the town's regulations. These allegations consist of 3 counts on June the 23rd, 3 counts on June the 24th, 6 counts on June the 25th, and 2 counts on July the 13th. There's also a charge of MGL Chapter 138, Section 64 for failing to maintain the licensed premises in a safe, orderly, and lawful manner. Next, why this matter is serious. I want to emphasize that this is not an allegation involving one isolated mistake or one questionable identification. The evidence presented to the board concerns repeated incidents over multiple nights. According to the investigation, underage individuals were identified inside events advertised as 21 plus and were observed in possession of alcoholic beverages. On June the 24th, staff were specifically alerted by an officer, an off-duty officer, that underage individuals were inside the establishment. Despite that warning, additional underage individuals were identified at another 21 plus event the following evening. The investigation further alleges that on July the 13th, a 17-year-old entered through a back entrance without being asked for identification and was provided a bracelet. This pattern we feel is significant. A liquor license places responsibility on the licensee and approved manager to control the premises, properly supervise employees, and prevent alcohol from being furnished to persons under 21. The board should therefore consider not simply each individual incident, but what the evidence tonight demonstrates regarding the licensee's overall control and management of the licensed premises. Now, one consideration that we look at is prior compliance history, generally in the previous 5 years. The board should be aware that this is not this licensee's first compliance hearing in that time. The Muse appeared before the Select Board for a compliance hearing in November 2023 involving violations that included staff training and maintaining an orderly establishment following an incident with staff and patrons in the parking lot. If you remember, the proceeding resulted in a 1-day suspension, which was served on July 9th, 2024, and 5 additional suspension days were held in abeyance through July 9th of 2025. No further violations were reported during that abeyance period. The history that is relevant because the current allegations again raise concerns regarding staff training, supervision, and control of the premises. Now, in this presentation, we consider obviously aggravating and mitigating circumstances. The listed aggravating circumstances You can consider both when determining sanctions under Chapter 207. We've identified the following aggravating factors for the board's consideration. First, instance of failure to properly request or verify identification. Second, concerns regarding whether staff responsible for alcohol service and identification checks were suitably trained. Third, multiple violations occurring within a 3-year period. Fourth, failure to provide materials requested as part of the investigation and hearing preparation. Again, today, we did receive some of those materials. So I believe something was forwarded to you. If you did not receive that, as far as a list of what was received, I do have that copy for you. We did receive some of the materials we requested that would include staff training. There was some certificates, which would be known as tips, that is required for anyone serving alcohol, taking IDs, or, working in a liquor license establishment. And we have the staff list for the evenings in question. So again, if you have questions about that or need those details, I can provide that list for you. We can provide you documents as requested for this. Application of the sanction guidelines, and I believe that was in your packet. We can review that when we get down to once you've determined if violations have occurred and how many. We have treated so far the 2023 proceeding as one prior violation. For the current matter before you, rather than treating each alleged underage sale as a separate violation for purposes of escalating the sanction schedule, I've taken a bit more measured approach of treating each separate date of violation as one violation. That results in 4 current violations combined with the prior one. This places the licensee at the 5th violation level. Under Chapter 207, the guideline at that level provides for a 7 to 15-day suspension. The sanction schedule is a guideline, and the board, as always, retains discretion to consider the particular circumstances of this case. Finally, the recommendation from licensing based on the number and seriousness of the alleged violations, their occurrence over multiple dates, the prior compliance history, and the aggravating circumstances identified in the hearing materials. Licensing recommends a total sanction of 10 days suspension. I recommend 5 days be served from June 23rd through June 27th, 2027. That's next summer. And 5 additional days to be held in abeyance for 1 year, pending any further violations through August 19th, 2027. That's 1 year from today. I believe this recommendation is substantial enough to reflect the seriousness of the violations, while also providing a strong incentive for future compliance. The dates of the proposed served suspension are intentional. They correspond with the period during which several of the current violations occurred, which is something we've done in the past for everything. Ensure that the suspension has a meaningful consequence. In summary, I want to emphasize one point here. The purpose of discipline under Chapter 207 and MGL 138 is not simply punitive. It is to protect public safety and prevent future violations. As a town, we expect every liquor license, particularly an establishment hosting large 21+ entertainment events, to have reliable systems for identification checks, trained staff, controlled entrances, and management oversight. After multiple underage individuals are discovered on multiple nights, the response cannot simply be that individual employees made mistakes. The license belongs to the licensee, and responsibility for compliance ultimately rests with the licensee and the approved manager. If you find that these violations occurred, I believe the sanction should make clear that continued violations involving underage alcohol possession or failure to control the premises will be treated very seriously. So I will leave it at that for any questions of myself, Officer Deuce, Chief Casper, and then allow for Attorney Merberg to speak for the Muse.
Okay, thank you, Amy. That was very thorough. Okay, so does the board wish to hear from Officer? We got a very, comprehensive written report. Does anyone have any questions for Officer Deuce?
No, I have a question for Amy though.
Okay, go ahead.
Amy, can you explain, because this is the first time I've gone through one of these, that the first violation you're saying is the one from 2023. Do those ever expire, or is there some sort of
Historically, we
You
look.
have one in 2010 and then you
Yes.
don't have one till 2026. Like, how does that?
Yes, we would consider, and I think we've consistently considered the previous 5 years of, reoffending. And especially since the days in abeyance just expired last summer, it is within that time frame as well. So that's consistently what we have considered over the years, a reoffense that would consider that as an offense. But again, as we take this and determine what violations occurred that you agree occurred, you can look at what sanctions should be for that as well. Okay. I want to say one thing just to explain. In your packet, we did give you the police department report. Obviously, it was heavily redacted. Any names of underage individuals or their families were redacted per the law. But when I speak and say involved party, it will refer to the involved party list. Each redaction has involved party, and each black space in the report has a number that refers back to that involved party. So if there was questions with that, and when I say that, they'll be referred to as involved party and the number in the report. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Are you ready to hear from the folks from the Muse and their counsel?
Good evening. My name is James Burberg. I represent Mr. O'Reilly and the Muse. To begin with, we did send a bunch of materials in. I'm not sure that they made the packet. We were a little delayed in sending the materials. I have additional materials I'd like to submit to the board tonight because this is very fact specific. There's a suggestion that the Muse and its staff have not been vigilant about trying to keep underage people out of this particular establishment. The problem is to understand correctly what we have here is you need to look at some of the materials that are hard to look at, but I have them here. And I wanted to go through some of them with the board. I believe that I sent most of this stuff to Amy on a flash drive, but it may not have made your information yet. To begin with, I'd like to let the board know that this hearing, I know it's adversarial, but in fact, we are on the same side with the licensing authority. We are on the same side with the police department. We are sharing the same concerns about underage people being in the facility. To understand factually how this occurs, to begin with, the quality of the counterfeit identification documents that are being used and scanned by equipment which we have are so sophisticated that in fact even police officers can't necessarily understand whether or not they're counterfeited. The first document series that we had given to the licensing board through Ms. Baxter was a series of materials. If I may, I'd like to hand them up. I don't think you've seen them in person yet, but I don't believe they can go onto the screen, but there's just two particular documents in this first package, if I may hand it up with permission.
If you could give it to Erica, please.
Oops. We may have received it.
Okay. I'm a little concerned that you're coming to a hearing with documents for us to review. Are these the requested documents that
They are.
Amy?
Yeah, they were submitted. They were just submitted on a flash drive. I don't know if they've been ever transcribed for the board or not.
Okay.
The first one was these as well.
Yeah, I mean,
So I did forward the email
I know.
that Amy got. So, but I'm just saying for everybody, it came in very late this afternoon and it was too late to go in the packet. So they received this electronically.
It was submitted several days ago. I actually had delivered it to Detective Olson when I was at court, and he had attempted to leave it with the licensing inspector. And for whatever reason, it was a day and a half delayed getting here. But I can certainly refer to them, and if the board would like to look at them, I'm happy to share them. The first materials that I would submit and did submit show that we have very sophisticated identification equipment called PUSTEC X150, which are passport and identification and license scanners. Those scanners, in fact, are at a cost of over $1,000 each, and the software is another $2,000, are the most sophisticated available. They are in place in the Muse at the present. We have also put in a device which looks like a turnstile that you'd ordinarily see at an airport. At a cost of $5,000, that device is the most sophisticated available anywhere in the world. The only reason it's not operational today is we're waiting for permission from the building department because the Muse only has one entrance and that has to go prominently in the entrance. But that was the first package of materials. The second thing I'd like to point out respectfully is we have a number of daunting tasks trying to identify people who are trying to get into the Muse who shouldn't be in the Muse. Now, there's really very little way for me to show you, other than to take out of this package, the licenses that we received in the last 3 days. These licenses are from Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, California, Indiana, North Carolina, Connecticut, and Delaware. And I understand that it would be hard to really understand what these are. I have a Xerox copy of them, but I also have the originals here. These are licenses that I suggest would fool any police officer in the Commonwealth. And I'd like to, with permission, hand them up and you can look at these licenses. I have stacks and stacks of them. They seize them every day. This is the past week's licenses. I'm holding probably 30 licenses. To understand the gravity of the difficulty in trying to ferret out people who are under 21, you need to have some understanding of the quality of the IDs that are being used by underage children or underage people, for that matter. Most are in their 19 or 20 range, that they are presenting to the Muse, running through their scanners, and these are the documents. And unless the board understands the quality of this and the daunting task presented by the Muse, you can't understand how some people get through the process, particularly on the 21 plus nights. And again, I have this stack. I don't know if you'd like me to hand them up.
I think in the interest of privacy, I don't think any of us should see those because they represent photos potentially of underage
Well,
individuals. So I think your
They're
point is
well
made.
over 18, but
Your point is made without.
But again, to fully understand it, these are people who have used these and presented them in establishments all over this island.
I have a question. When you scan any of these, and I agree with Brooke, we don't need to see them. We know how good they are at this point in the world. But when they scan, what do they show?
Well, the ones I have here show that they're no good.
Right.
But, and we mark them and cut them in half and we write in bold letters on the black. We have these because these have been seized. And I know the police department will tell the board, there are people that have the temerity to come into the police station and demand these licenses back, saying, we want our licenses back because they pay $300 or $400 on the internet for them and they think they should own them. But they're fraudulent and they don't get them back and we don't return them. To understand, again, where we are in this situation, the Muse has changed its complexion slightly over the last several years. One of the things they've done is partnered with the Nantucket Music Foundation, which is also supported with their partner Fairwinds, and they have brought in live music. They have a capacity for 372 people in the facility. And what they've done is they have attracted bands, made it a destination, if you will, for people on the island, both for entertainment, for these bands, and in fact have attracted some well-known bands that used to be traveling to the Muse to perform in the past. So while I understand, and I think the board and certainly members of the board understand, it's a very daunting process to try to keep these people out. The question is, how do we resolve the problem? And I have a solution for that. Number one, we only have a single entrance, and I'll let you hear from my client, Mr. O'Reilly, momentarily. At that single entrance, we have two high-tech devices which scan, and we believe correctly scan out fraudulent documents like these. We have a new turnstile scanner, which will be installed when the building department lets us put the actual device in the location where the people have to come in. We have a hyper-vigilant staff. We have sent over the training manual, which I believe is part of your package. We have done everything possible, including having wristbands on individuals who have the correct licenses and documents to make sure when they're being served that they're served with being the age of 21. These high-quality false IDs from all these places, we've done everything possible short of calling up because we don't have the ability, like the police department does, for example, to make an inquiry. Is the license holder X with a certain number a legitimate license, which the police department can do? We don't have that. It's called CJIS. We're not allowed to have that. It's very highly protected. The bartenders that were involved in these nights were all tip trained. We sent a list of the tip trained people. The bartenders were only, I know Amy mentioned about 10 or 15 people on duty, but the bartenders and servers are only 3 people. On one occasion, it was 5 people. All of the people are tips trained. We're willing to use private details. In the past, we have attempted to get services from police officers to be near the door to try to deter these people. We're certainly willing, at our own expense, to hire private details. We're willing to retrain any personnel that the administrator thinks we're not training correctly. There are tips trains, there are crowd control. We sent a crowd control managers list. We sent the tips trained list. We're willing to work with the town in any reasonable way that we can to ensure that people under 21 are not entering these premises. I suggest respectfully, this was not deliberate violations. These happened back in June. It took till sometime in middle of July even to get a police report about the activities. If we had learned in June that these violations were ongoing and not, in the police department's view, being stopped, we would have redoubled our efforts. This is not a situation where we are not accepting responsibility. This is a problem for establishments that attract people who like music. I'm sure the collective experience of this board understands people 19 and 20 years old want to go out and socialize even if the law says they can't. It's an ongoing problem. The select board has certainly a great deal of authority here to decide what to do. The first violation was back in 2023. It involved some assaultive behavior outside of the establishment. It had nothing to do with alcohol directly. It was an event that took place, unfortunately, with a patron and some of the security staff outside the premises. Those security staff individuals were found not responsible. At the end of the day, as I say, this is not an adversary proceeding in our view. This is a proceeding where we're trying to explain that we're trying to do the right thing. And for that reason, we certainly ask the board, if they find the violations, because there are technical violations, that they use their discretion and not blanket apply the five-day suspension, which is, of course, very difficult and economically crippling for my client. I'm happy to let you hear from Mr. O'Reilly. He's been in this business since the early 90s. He's run this establishment since that time. It's one of the few locations, as you probably all know, where they do have live entertainment and dancing. They're trying to keep the place as upscale as they can. They're trying to work to bring in quality entertainment so the over 21 group can enjoy it. And again, I don't believe the select board's here to punish my client. I think he understands the severity of what goes on. And I think respectfully, we've done, I say we, he has done with his activities, his training, with the devices that he has, everything virtually possible to keep out this onslaught of kids that walk around with these IDs that are as good as you can get apparently on the internet and as good as you can get generally in the world. But I would bring Mr. O'Reilly up. He's happy to answer any questions the board may have. And thank you for my rather long diatribe.
Good evening, everybody.
You'll need to step in front of the mic and raise it to your, it won't pick you up unless you're right in front of it.
Hello.
You don't need to bend over, bend it right up. There you go. Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Just
Good e-
identify yourself for the record.
Mike O'Reilly from the Muse, owner operator. Good evening, Select Board. We're here to answer any questions. I concur with James here about what we're trying to do and where we're going now, doubling down on our security and making sure that we're safe. This is not the business we want to be in with minors. We've never have. We never want minors in our building, but we want to stop them. We want to help the community. I was called in to meet with Officer Deuce in July, and we talked about the minors that she observed online on social media with a drink in their hand, and then some other minors and her concerns. And I talked with her on the second meeting, and we said, let's work. I wanted to work together with her on addressing this on their professionalism, because they know a lot more than I do. And they, we can help if we collaborate together. Having detail out front would also be something that I would definitely want to do. It's hard to get detail there because we've called a few times and it hasn't happened yet. But anything, do you have any questions or any ideas of what direction we're going, how we're handling things? I'm just here to answer and help out.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Jill.
I think this is more directed to Amy, if you don't mind. That just struck. So with concerts that they've been bringing, which it does sound, the concerts that they've been having at the Muse. I know that you can have a wristband in some instances for underage people like they do at the brewery.
Correct.
How does that work with the license that they have at the Muse?
Well, we would have to kind of talk about that. It's a nightclub. It's a nightclub license as well. So it is advertised as 21 plus. I need to maybe counteract some of the things that were said in this about scanning and this being in June, not hearing till July. It was obviously the last week in June. Multiple nights, Officer Deuce, in an off-duty capacity, alerted staff that she identified underage people in the bar. And not all were asked to leave, or they approached Muse staff. Then they were told they scanned IDs, but then told Officer Deuce with hers that the scanner was broken. So there's a couple things there that I think did not jive with kind of the report there. But one of the part of this with the 17-year-old that we did get video this week from them from their back door, the 17 and 18-year-old individuals 1 and 2 were let in through the back door. We received scanned IDs from them. One was a very blurry expired Georgia license, and I couldn't tell what, the birth date that it said on it. And the other of the 18-year-old individual showed no information that had showed up on the scanner, except it possibly was a fake ID, but it was different evening. It wasn't the evening they were let in the back door. So we see here where we have issues where they said that the 17-year-old's given a bracelet. And in this case, bracelet meant they were okay. So I don't know why there were bracelet mentioned in this case when it was 21 over. The whole event was 21 over. So in the future, if they wanted to work on something like that, these concerts are great. Let's just say we're not at all saying these are not great events for the island. They are. But we would have to kind of look at that and understand the law in that area for something like this. If they want to do, are you asking if they want to do something like Cisco, where they had bracelets for folks that came in? I think something certainly that can be considered. But in these cases, they were certainly advertised as 21 over, as most things there are. But it's certainly in the future, yeah, that can be considered.
So I had a couple questions around discrepancy from what we've heard from the Muse team and what is in Officer Deuce's report. Particularly, my questions are around the quality of the IDs that Officer Deuce observed versus what has been represented by Mr. Mirberg. And I would also like to ask the question of why were these individuals not escorted out of the building at the time? Because if they were identified as being underage, and that's in Officer Deuce's report, that I think in a couple of cases where they were not required to leave when it was determined that their IDs were of concern. So.
Hello, Officer Deuce. So the one fake ID that I observed was you could see the plastic didn't line up with the top part of it. So once you made eye contact with the actual ID, it was clearly fake. And I knew it by immediately looking at it and not even running it through what Attorney Merberg said through our CJIS system. And that was an ID that was used to get into the Muse that night. And that was the night that they had advised me while I personally provided my identification and they didn't scan it. So with that being said, that was the night that they stated the scanner wasn't working when I addressed it to them. I will also say that when I did approach the staff, they did ask me to point out who was not 21. The staff did start to try to get those underage parties out. Now, obviously, there was no way I would have known the amount of underage the tourists. I was only able to identify a few of them. And a lot of the locals did go to the bathroom. And with the amount of people in the bar at that time, once they came out of the bathroom, the staff was notified again. And I think at that point we had just also left. They were notified of who was not 21, and then we escorted ourselves out as well. I think, does that answer all the questions that I can?
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. O'Reilly, what happens in a case where, in a circumstance like this, what do you think your obligation is under the rules of your license to ensure that once an underage individual has been identified as such, to ensure that they are no longer allowed to be in the building at a 21 and over event?
Once we were notified by Officer Deuce, the staff also informed me, and I came down and helped on the search for the individuals. And once we do find them, we ask them for their ID again. We take a look at their ID again. We try to take a picture or something of it so we know what we're dealing with, and try to take a picture of them, because as they're running out the door, they're not easy to catch, because they know we're onto it. And I applaud Officer Deuce for pointing them out to us. But our policy is to take them right out if anybody says, hey, I think that person's a minor. You know, then they're under scrutiny by us as well. We wouldn't just sit back and not let anything happen.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify one point, if I may. There is one singular
Just
event.
bring the mic down.
I'm sorry, forgive me.
Thank you.
There's one singular event where a sound engineer went through the back entrance and brought in the two people that they were talking about. I don't believe there's any evidence they were drinking, but they did bring them in through the back door. We provided the video that showed those two individuals. And it was someone who is not directly employed by my client, but he was part of the sound group. And we've corrected that problem. There was an entrance that was made with a technician. He brought these two young people in. There's no evidence they were drinking, but he did bring them in. And we produced that evidence and the video for Ms. Baxter to look at as well.
Were they issued bracelets?
I don't believe they had bracelets. I believe they just walked in with this person.
Okay. I'm a little unclear as to whether they were given bracelets that would indicate that their IDs had been checked and that they were legal to drink. Maybe I've misunderstood.
It's only a singular photograph, but I don't think you can see bracelets in it.
Yeah, when he came in with the sound engineer, they, I don't know where the bracelets came into play, because you would have to come through the front door to get the bracelets. So I don't know how.
Maybe I just misunderstood. Okay.
Do you have security on that back door? So security let the guy bring him in?
At this point, they, yes.
The engineer was
And
using.
is that security officer still working for you?
Pardon?
Is he still working for you?
I had to let 3 people go after investigating all these incidents, thinking that they were directly related.
Because obviously, I mean, my issue is, I know these fake IDs are good. Some are not, you know, and it's only as good as the people that are scanning them. And I know I don't know, I don't get to the Muse much. I'm sorry, Mike, but I don't get much out of my little
don't need
circle
an
of the
ID,
wharf. But I know that the downtown wharf, they have stacks and stacks and stacks. And you're right, these things come out of China, they come out of wherever. They're very good. It just, you know, if it's a Nantucket kid, like my son never got to drink anywhere until he turned 21 in a day, because everyone knew who he was. And that's, we know who we know. But your bouncers don't know who you know. So I can cut you a little slack there, but I can't cut you slack on if you had a security guy in the back door and the sound engineer let 2 people in. That's blatantly
The
a
actual
problem.
video, the rear door is actually secured with a cross piece and locks, and it was open to let some staff person go through with equipment, and he walked these two young people in.
But the
We
security guy should have said, and kicked them back out. So that I have a little problem.
Understood.
You know, the fact that there are 4 of these in a pretty short period of time, I don't know why it's now August and we're just getting to these, but, you know, it's great that you're having all these great bands here and stuff, and you're going to have these kind of problems, but at the same time, it causes even more problems for you. So I I'm not really sure what we do here, but I definitely think the back door needs a lot more scrutiny and, you know,
Right. We've tightened it up definitely 10 times from the night of that incident. And there's no toleration for anything like that. Now we actually have all the bands have their names and their badges that they are with the band and they're traveling, or road gear type of thing. And we have a list of the names of them as they come to the island. So now we're checking both from a clipboard with the list of names and verifying their badge that they are part of the band.
and what about the scanner and the question of whether it was broken or not? Was it broken? Was
Yeah,
it not broken?
We just updated the whole system. It was quite flanky because, as Amy said, the second scan of one of the IDs in question was blurry and you couldn't see it. So it wasn't calibrated properly. So now everything's been updated, it's calibrated properly. So what the new scanner does is it takes the back barcode of the ID and it extracts it, and it takes the next scan and it takes the information on the front and it compares both of them to see that they're accurate. And then it either gives you, hey, this is good, or hey, you better look at this one because nothing's matching or nothing's lining up. So it's pretty intense.
And how well trained are staff? I mean, when you have technology that may not work, what's the backup in terms of training for checking IDs?
It's not, the scanner working doesn't, we tell the staff and we train them, it's not 100% accurate. It's just a tool to work with. You work with this tool and it says, and it blows up the whole images in different ways that you can see stronger, deeper, like a magnifying glass. And you use that as a tool, then you could say, you know what, now I got this, now let me re-go over. Let's see some extra identification. When were you born, what year, what's your zodiac, different things, the height, the weight, who you're with. There's definite ways we go through this, but if you scrutinize, 300 people in one night, that's a long night. So, we take people, we look at them under 30, and then we go and we dive into it to make sure everything's matching up. And people trip up the whole time, their friends give themselves up, we work with the community. Anybody comes in and says, hey, I think that's my friend's kid over there. Then we go and we find out why, how did they get in? What are we doing wrong? Let's do it. Let's get them out of here. So,
So at the end of the day, we're asking you to exercise your discretion, and I recognize the 5-day suspension recommendation. I'm asking you to abate that and just make this something much more palatable, and perhaps even suspend any of the days. It's not a situation, as I said, where we're trying to fight with you. We're trying to work with you. And we ask for your help.
Okay, thank you. I think at this point, if the board members are good, I think, Erica, the next step is to suspend the receipt of new information, right? According to the steps. We don't do these very often. So Amy, do you want to?
Yep, so recommend sequence is to, after testimony and questions are complete, entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, deliberate and make specific findings of fact regarding the alleged violations. If violations are found, determine the number of violations for purposes of Chapter 207. We can put that list up from that. Consider the aggravating and mitigating circumstances that were presented to you. Deliberate separately regarding sanctions, vote on the disciplinary action. At that point, we will prepare a written decision reflecting your findings and sanction. And the licensee will be advised of its right to appeal the board's decision to the ABCC within 5 days of receiving our written decision.
Okay, thanks, Amy. So is the board good? If we close the evidentiary portion, we're not going to be asking any questions of fact. So if we're ready to do that, I'd entertain a motion. You guys comfortable?
Yeah, I'll move to close it.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That said, we can have a discussion, thoughts from the board on, in terms of, I think if I'm following this, our next step is to determine whether there are violations. And
Well,
is there
I
any
think-
discussion or?
I'll start on that. I think there's violations. They've admitted there's violations. So I think that the trick for us is what is an appropriate
Okay.
punishment. So
So-
the violations are there.
Okay, so you're comfortable finding the violations as proposed by Amy, that they be identified as 5 violations, right? 5 dates, 1 violation for each date rather than individual underage.
Maybe I think it's 40.
Folks. Was it? Amy,
It's
walk
4
us
dates.
through that again. Sorry, you might as well stay at the mic. Amy. Thanks.
So it was 5, 1 for the previous one in the past 3 years,
Oh,
and
I
then
see.
1 for
Yeah.
each date, June 23rd, 24th, 25th, and July the 13th.
Okay, so
But
the 23rd was already found and dealt with, right? The one from 2023.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's typically, we'll look at that as one.
So there
but
have
you
been
can choose not
5.
to. Yes.
Okay.
Remind me of what the first one was.
So the first one from 2023, that followed the altercation
The
in the
fight.
parking lot. Correct.
So, Jill?
So that was different than what we're looking at today.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I view that one very differently than this.
Okay, so following the 1 per date, we'd be at 4, I think. Unless we're retroactively considering the one from 2023.
I'm not.
Okay, and the fact that, okay, all right, so following Amy's logic, staff's logic on this would be 4. Are we comfortable? Somebody want to make a motion to find 4, that there were 4 violations?
Do you want me
Right.
to read something?
Sure,
Okay.
Erica.
So I think the motion would be, I move that the board find that on June 23rd, 2026, June 24th, 2026, June 25th, 2026, and July 13th, 2026, that the licensee violated general law, chapter 138, section 34 by serving alcohol to a minor.
Okay.
Is that right, Amy? Where are you?
Okay, is, we comfortable? Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll have a discussion. I'm thinking, I'm looking at it slightly differently. And you can agree or disagree or not, but I'm looking at saying, close them for 2 days, but then hold more in abeyance.
We're not talking about that. We're just
All right.
finding that there were violations.
Oh, all
That's
right.
the first step.
All right, I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Yes, there were.
so do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we have now found that there were 4 violations on the dates stated. And now we can move to,
The motion concerning the appropriate action to take.
right, the appropriate action to take. So thoughts on that before we get to a motion, comments? Where's everybody at?
Well, I started, I was thinking of something like two days, closing for 2 days and then holding a good number of days in abeyance so that nothing happens again, like we did previously, and they didn't, nothing did happen. So, I think 4 days is a lot. And I think that this is happening at every bar on this island every night. And, and it's, and it's not gonna stop. It's what happens out here. And,
Yeah, this is,
what I remember here, there's a quick story.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just give a quick one. When during COVID, when a lot of people were outside, I would go and I would sit downtown. I would go and I'd sit on a corner and watch at some of the various places. And it was interesting because Amy would pull up with the, she's laughing because she remembers. She would pull up at some of these places with the town truck and the police were there. And they would be scrambling like rats because it was outside so you could see it. And they would all go running for cover. And then the police would drive away and they'd all come back again. And this was, this wasn't just, this wasn't just one place. There's a few. And so So this is this is something that the police are dealing with every night. It's what the bars are dealing with and every night. And so I don't want to, I don't want to go put four on it, but I do want enough that there's a huge incentive to not have something happen. So.
This is a tough one for me because you turn 18 and you can join the military, go to war, fight for your country. You can vote for a president, but you can't go in a bar and have a beer. Now, luckily, when I was 18, I could. My poor sister turned 18, she could, and then they changed it to 21. When she was 20, she had to take a year off, and then she went back. It's ridiculous, but it's the law. My issue is not the kids that snuck through with the fake IDs, because that's going to happen. My issue is the backdoor problem. Somebody intentionally let those kids in, and that is a problem. So I would support Matt's motion for that issue. This is not isolated to the Muse. This is just the fact that they have great bands, and some of our police officers go there off duty and happen to recognize kids that they know. If they probably went downtown and went into any one of the other establishments downtown, then probably the same thing would happen. The IDs get better and better every year. The scanners, you get a new scanner, the same people that make the ID get the scanner and they figure out how to get around it. So this is inevitable. It's going to happen. But at the same time, it's the height of the summer and you're busy and you want to let as many people into your establishment as you can legally have. Mike, your people, you got to stay on them. You know what I'm saying? So I would support Matt's motion, and I think that probably now more than ever, this will probably be the last time we hear this from the news, at least for a little while. And it puts everybody else on notice. I mean, this is completely different than when we do a sting and we send one of our CSOs into an establishment and try to order a beer without an ID. This is local kids that snuck in that we all know who they are. I've seen them in other places. I'm not a police officer, so I don't go over and say anything, but it happens. And the worst time for me being a parent was when my son was 18 to 21. Because when they're 18, they don't hang around with the high school kids anymore. And when they're 20, and then you can't go to a bar. So they're going to be out on a beach somewhere drinking or somewhere else. And God almighty, they're driving or they're not driving. It was the worst time to be a parent. So it's tough. It's tough as a parent. It's tough as a business owner. But the backdoor thing is a real issue for me.
Jill, any thoughts?
I think it's just a little different. We've seen bands at the brewery for a while now, but the brewery closes early. And so I feel like Mike's kind of exploring new territory with having a lot of bands. It's a new kind of business he's looking at. And so that makes this, I can't remember the band that night, but I think it was a popular band for the kids. No, the June violation where Officer Deuce. Okay, so whoever that is, that's too young for me, but I appreciate a lot of the other bands that you've brought, and I recognize that you're having a busy summer, so it kind of seems inevitable to me about it, but I would love to have a conversation to explore the bracelet option because some of the bands they have really are appealing to many generations. And I would love to see an opportunity for people to go see a band like that with their 19-year-old or their 16-year-old, if that was at all a possibility. I know that's not what we're looking at tonight, but I think it's something that I'd love for us to consider at some point.
So my thoughts are, these are advertised as 21 and over. And the responsibility is with the establishment to do their level best. My concern is it was 3 nights in a row and they knew on the first night that there was a problem. And why it felt to me like you should have doubled down or tripled down, knowing that kids had snuck in and were found the first night. So the fact that it happened 3 nights in a row, okay, someone on your staff knew because they were alerted by Officer Deuce. Someone, okay, so I'm not going to go back and forth, but my understanding is that somebody on the staff was made aware that those folks were there. So how that didn't translate into more attention in a new situation where you're having more people and it's a band and you're creating a different environment and you're trying something new, that sort of stuck in my head as problematic, as if we might refer to as an aggravating factor, that it was multiples in a row. Bobby, I hear you about the drinking age, but the law is the law, and these folks accept liquor licenses knowing what their requirements are and what the expectations are under the law. So while I understand it's hard, and I can have compassion for that, it is the law. And I'm inclined, well, but I want to clarify from Matt. He said 2, right? And what number in abeyance over what period of time? You weren't very specific about that.
I wasn't, but my goal would be to be, do 4 nights, 4 in abeyance, put a number that means something in abeyance. And that, and the rationale for that is it addresses one of your concerns, which is that it should have been taken, care of more quickly, because if it doesn't next time, then they know automatically that there's 4 or 5 more nights coming.
Yeah.
Which is a severe thing, and he's not going to let that happen, And so that was the idea behind it, but I'm not sure, so that's the rationale was to get at exactly what you're talking about. There's a couple nights because it was serious, but we're not doing 4 or 5. We're not saying all 5 counted, et cetera. But we could do that if it isn't corrected.
So,
Question.
yeah.
What did y'all do with the last violation that you had like this? Because I think I don't remember.
Yeah, well.
Typically, since I've been on the board, that we do the closure nights and then we hold some in abeyance. And the intention behind that is
Held it for another year.
it's a warning hanging over, right? So
I would do 2 and 4 for a year, or 2 and 4 for 2 years, whatever the board feels, but.
somebody want to try a motion and
All right,
go for it, Matt?
I'll go 2 and 4 for a year.
Okay, so
Is it-
two closures to be
Closures.
held during this period of June.
Yeah, on what
towards-
date?
Yeah.
On the first 2 dates of this year. Of the ones, the copy, in the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And are we talking, I don't know, I don't want to be overly punitive, but weeknights versus weekdays, equivalent days of the week? Does that matter to anyone?
I don't think that matters.
I don't think I don't think it matters because.
It's on the calendar.
Yeah,
Okay.
wherever it falls on the calendar, but and if I were operating the business, I'm not going to bring a band in on, a
Right.
night that I'm closed. So, they're going to work around that anyway.
Okay.
So, you can't say we're going to do it on, a night you're going to have a big band. I mean,
No.
that's, yeah. So I'm not that worried about that. I think it's enough.
So we should identify the dates, June 22nd and 23rd.
Well, the violation was June 23rd is when it started, so usually you would do it within the time frame of the violation.
Okay.
June 23rd is a Wednesday.
And the date of the letting the kids in the back door was which one? That's July
July
13th.
13th.
So Bobby, would you like to have that equivalent date? Does it matter? Okay. So, somebody pick. Matt, you're looking at the calendar.
I'm looking at the calendar, just like what you're saying, what was it, June?
23rd-ish.
23rd-ish.
The 23rd is a Wednesday.
Yeah. for next year.
For
Yep.
2027.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this year it was is a Tuesday, yeah. So I would do the, yeah.
Yeah, of
I
2027.
agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the motion is to have closures on June 23rd and June 24th of 2027 with 4 additional days held in abeyance for what period of time?
If you go with the original motion, it would be from the date of the hearing to August 19th, 2027.
Fine.
I'd rather go through the whole season
Okay. All right. So
to
let's
make sure
make
that
it-
they're,
I'll make what's a friendly amendment?
why don't we say through,
Labor Day.
yeah, September 15th.
September
So we
15th.
cover the whole season.
Okay. That's a friendly amendment. I'll accept that.
Okay. All right. So,
And
so
that's
just to restate, Erica, do you want to restate it?
2027.
Yeah.
So the motion is to have a 2 days of closure. That would be what, a suspended, 2 days suspension of their liquor license to be served June 23rd and 24th, 2027, and to hold 4 days in abeyance from today through September 15th, 2027.
Okay.
And if they violate within that time, then they get another one.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
And then, yeah, then if that happens, then we're back here and we'll set the dates.
Yep.
The next 4 dates in the next year, probably,
Okay.
or depending on when the violation is, but I don't think we're gonna have a violation.
I hope not. So I'm going to give the second to Jill since they were in chorus over here. And so all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Is that it? Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Next up is we're skipping capital projects according to the amended agenda and moving to review and request for endorsement of the 2027 annual town meeting and the annual town election timeline.
Timeline is very similar to what it was for the 2026 annual town meeting. As development of the warrant progresses, some of those dates will most definitely change. Planning already alerted me to the tightness of the time frame for them, but there's a little bit of time built in there, so I don't expect it to be a big problem. And if you endorse it, we can get this posted on the website. It includes all the usual activities.
Okay. Motion? Yes, we have to. Okay. Motion to endorse the timeline.
Motion to endorse timeline.
Okay.
Second.
Do I have a second? Second
Second.
from Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get a question, Bobby?
Bobby?
No.
Are you gonna be fishing?
No, I really wanted to have a discussion about spring and a fall town meeting and not having multiple nights, but I guess we're not gonna do that, so.
Well, wait, I mean,
Uh,
do you want to,
I,
can I make a comment about that?
Hold on, hold on.
we just,
It's not on the agenda.
all
Bobby.
right, then I'm,
Okay,
you
so
guys
that
can be the
3 to
majority.
1. Okay. Okay,
Test vote.
so committee reports.
I usually do that. You don't take my job.
Yeah, committee reports.
I have none.
Okay, anybody? Okay. Affordable Housing Trust did their thing tonight with HPP for me, so, okay. So, I would, accept a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session for the item on the agenda, which is, related to executive session minutes. Do
So
I have that
moved.
motion? Okay,
Second.
second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I
So do I.
Me too, but I think I'm gonna make it.
It's going to be quick.
It should
And
be.
we've got to do this executive session real quick.
I'll go up and do it all day.
Oh, I think it's so nice.